Everybody, what is up? What is up? Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I was making sure everything was working and getting set up. So sorry if you guys were waiting on me. What's up, everybody? Let me know if you can hear and see me all right. I was also grabbing a flight of some beers to share and talk about tonight. So I've got a whole mess of them here. So we'll talk about those. What's everybody doing? Let me know if you can hear and see me all right. And then we will get started, man. It's gonna be an awesome, awesome day. Is my birthday, so of course that's the best day ever. But let me know if you guys can hear me and see me all right. Give me a quick thumbs up. What's up, Casey? How are you doing, man? Thank you for the birthday wishes. Appreciate it. I'm gonna try to turn that down. I thought my mic was a little bit high, so tell me if it's a little bit loud or a little bit quiet. But got some awesome news today too. I actually medaled in a couple beers that I submitted. We'll talk about that again tonight too. See if I can pull open the picture because I haven't got the medals yet, but that somebody sent me here. See if I can pull that up in a little bit and I'll share that with you guys. But what's everybody doing? Just had mine on the 14th. Awesome. Happy birthday to you too, man. Let's see. Where did they get sent that picture? Here it is. I'll share that with you guys in a little bit, and we'll talk about a couple of those beers that did really well. So that's awesome. I'm really pumped. A couple of these I knew were actually really good beers, and so we'll see how they turn out. Should be good, pretty good. Let me shut that off. All right. So I've got four beers here that are on tap right now. So I have just from right to left. Let me kind of show you, and then I'll kind of talk about it. So I have a Mexican lager, which is my last video that I just dropped. If you haven't watched that out or watched that, you can do so. You can check that out. It's an awesome beer. This is that tangerine IPA. There's just a little bit left in the keg of that. This is the hazy IPA and the blackberry sour. These two, the blackberry sour and the hazy, which I'll hold up, are the two that I actually got medals in, of course. So one of the things that I was going for with the hazy IPA specifically, this one is uh, is the one that I was actually going for gold on. So we'll stay tuned. We'll see if I made that happen or not. But I did medal in that one, so we'll see how I did. I'll talk about that in just a minute. It's my actual birthday tie. It's mine, not the channels. The channel started April 1st is like the orbit every year for the channel. So that's the channel's anniversary is in April. My actual birthday is today. So very cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. But so let me know if it says it's not receiving enough video to maintain a smooth stream. So if you see if it's buffering or something like that with you guys, let me know, please, because I think YouTube's having a little hiccup, but I think it's okay. From my end, it looks all right anyway. So this blackberry sour, this is the one I brewed. I did not put it on the channel. I have a lot of sour episodes, so you guys can go check out those if you want to. I do have a bunch of sours, but this is my favorite one I do every year. I coined the name of this one Blackberry, or excuse me, the Farmer's Market Blackberry Sour. It's a regular kettle sour video, and I put 6 pounds of blackberries in there, fresh blackberries. So really cool. It's kind of an opaque color on purpose. I do this one with a lot of white wheat, and so it looks really awesome. So this one's awesome. The hazy IPA. This is that one that's for members only. So if you're like Ty and you hit that join button, you can get that recipe. That one I was going for gold. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is that tangerine IPA. So this one's really clear. It's on the back, so you can kind of see how clear that one is. Crystal clear, really awesome tangerine flavor. And then this is that Mexican lager, which is just a smooth, awesome, easy drinking beer for the summer months. Super clear. You can see my face through that thing even. So that one has a little hint of limes on the back end because I have that Motica hops in there. So those are four awesome beers I have on tap right now. I'm trying to get rid of the tangerine one because I have a couple beers right behind it that I'm going to be brewing and one that's already finishing up right now. So What's up, Kevin? How are you, man? Thank you for the birthday wishes. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, today is the actual day. I figured I'd jump on anyway because what better to spend the day with you guys and talk about some beer brewing and all that kind of thing. So we had a fun day. My wife and I met some friends. We went over to Greenville, South Carolina for the day. It's a couple hours away. Drove there, saw some things, did some shopping, did some brewery tours, or not really tours, but toured the city of breweries anyway. Went to really cool place called Gather Greenville. It's like a little startup for like businesses, whether it's retail or restaurants and that kind of stuff. But they're built out of shipping containers, so that's pretty cool. So they made up this little kind of beer garden, if you will, and it has craft brews, not ones that were brewed there, but just all over the place. And then they have little restaurants and stuff. So that was kind of cool. So we did that yesterday. What's up, Alfonso? Welcome, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. So then we did that yesterday, and then today was just kind of a chill day. I actually got up, went fishing with my son, and then now having some beers with you guys. So I really haven't had a whole lot of beers today. Had one with lunch because we went out to lunch for my birthday, but other than that, we're starting right now. So this is the Blackberry Sour, and for all those joining us, I was just telling everybody I actually medaled in a couple of these beers. I submitted two to the U.S. Open, which brew club does that's close to me. They hold this every year called the U.S. Open. Last year I submitted two different beers and I got second place in the hazy. So this year I did the video. It's for members only for the hazy IPA. That one um, I was going for gold, and so drum roll here. I'll show my screen here. So for these two beers, here's what I got. It's for the hazy IPA, this one, and for the blackberry sour, this one. These are the two that I submitted into the competition. My Mexican lager wasn't done. I would have put that one in there. I did put that in some other ones, but the results are I got second place again for the Death by Fruit Hazy IPA, and then I got the third place medal for the Farmers Market Blackberry Sour. So, again, awesome. I got second and third. I was going for first place with this, but I just got edged out once again. I did not get gold for that, but I'm getting real close. So we will try it again next year for sure. I'm gonna make it one of these days. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna get gold in a hazy, I promise. But that one was, if not, that one had to just edge me out because I think this hazy IPA is banging good. So that one got second place. I'm sure there was a bunch of I'm sure there was a bunch of hazies last year. I think there was 27 of them, and so to get second place out of 27 brewers is awesome, man. That's awesome. What's up, Chris? Welcome, welcome, man. So yeah, so this is the beer that got third place. That trophy there, or that trophy. I wish it was a trophy. That medal was third place for this blackberry sour. It's a fruited beer. Its category is 29A for fruit beer, and then which is what a lot of fruited sours enter in. And then this one is the 21C category, which is hazy IPA. And so I got this one. This is the one that I got second place in this year. Again, I got second place last year, second place this year. So I got to up my game just a little tiny bit to win that for next year. I was going for gold. Man, I was this close again. It just edging me out every year, but still awesome. I'm happy. I submitted two beers and I got two medals. So there you go. I also submitted these two and my Mexican lager, the Ocho de Junio beer that I brewed. Again, that one's on the channel. That one I also entered in a couple of others. So once we get the results for those, I'll share those with you guys too. But awesome. I'm really happy submitting two beers, getting two medals. Can't complain. So that's awesome. And those are in categories where I expect there's probably a lot of competition in those. So that's awesome. Mic is a tad low. Okay, let me turn it back up again. I turned it down because it looks like from my end that it was high. But let me see. Does that seem a little bit better? We'll try that. So I was hoping it wasn't blowing up people's microphones and stuff like that, so I turned it down just a little bit. But I think it's good now. Let me know if that sounds a little better. So yeah, so we got those. I'm gonna go through and just drink a couple of these as we get going. So raspberry sour, or not raspberry. I keep saying raspberry. I did raspberry before this. This one's blackberry. 6 pounds of blackberries. Just an awesome beer. Kind of reminds you of like a cider when you're drinking it, but you still get that kind of wheat and good mouthfeel like a beer has. But it's fruity and you get that blackberry aftertaste. Really, really good, but it's tart. It's not like Warhead sour. So you still get the full blackberry flavor. You get that tartness and you still get some kind of good, clean mouthfeel from the beer itself. So it's really, really good. Um, the hazy, I mean, you all know what a hazy IPA tastes like. This one's banging good. Again, hit that join button if you want to become a member. You get this recipe. I've also put out another recipe that I just put on there last week. I forget what that one was. That one was it the paleo one? I have a couple of recipes that I'm putting out for members only, the exclusive ones. So those are already up and on there, and you'll see those. And then for everybody else, I am still doing videos with the recipes in there, but for the exclusive ones, which I think are like really, really good recipes, I am going to be putting those exclusively for members if you want to hit the join button, help out the channel. But that's this one, this hazy IPA. This one's got second place. This one, I changed the recipe from last year. Last year's recipe is still on my page. You can go check that one out. I think that one's called I can't remember the name of that video. I'll look it up in a second. But that one is on there. This one I think is better than that, but it's still got second place. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I gotta kick it up a notch next year. But great beer there. I mean, you just get all the fruit flavors, and I mean the haze is there. It's mild. It's got a full mouthfeel. It's real good. This is that tangerine. I can't believe I still have a little bit of this. This was a little while ago. I did my live was brewing this beer, this tangerine IPA. So this one was really good. I would have probably done it without the coriander, but as it's been sitting in the keg, that kind of coriander spice has kind of fallen out, which I actually prefer not to have. So Chris says, how'd you brew your blackberry sour? That one is a kettle sour recipe. I used a Good Belly probiotic drink. I've got a bajillion videos on my channel about sour. So all of them are the exact same base recipe. So if you watch any of my sour recipes videos, you'll be able to see the base recipe and the process. But I really just changed the fruits that I put in it. The only kind of unique one that I do is the one that has ginger in it also. That one, the ginger I don't add for the same amount of days as all the rest of the fruit. That one I add specifically. I only add the ginger in the last like 3 days before I'm going to keg it, and then I pull it because the ginger can get really ginger really fast. And so I talk about that one. I do have the video specifically for the cranberry ginger sour, which I do right before Thanksgiving because that's when you have all of those cranberries on sale at the store, and I usually get the fresh cranberries in the bags, and then I rinse them with Star San and stuff, and then I freeze them to help break open the casing, kill all the bacteria and stuff that might be on it anyway, and then I mash them up like I normally do, like anything else, and put them in there with the ginger for a couple of days. But I add the ginger again later because the cranberries need that week to soak out some of that color and the flavors and stuff in there, like this one. But the ginger only needs a couple days. So everything else is the exact same on those videos. You'll check it out. You can go see that. That's awesome. Again, the tangerine video also is on my live. So if you want to watch this one, I did a follow-up video, like a tasting video of this tangerine so you can kind of see how it turned out. But the actual process we did over that live video a couple. So go back and check out the live section. You'll be able to see that one again. What's up, Brewing Bad? Thank you, man. Appreciate it. It is my actual birthday today, so that's awesome. I do have a twin brother too, so it's actually his birthday as well. So that's awesome. He doesn't live near me though. He lives up in Minnesota still. So um we have the this is the only one I haven't talked about yet. So we have the tangerine. This is the Mexican lager. This one is easily one of my favorites on tap right now just because of how hot it is in the summertime and you want like an easy drinking, clear, crystal clear, refreshing beer. This is it, man. I'm telling you, it almost looks like too clear in this small glass, but when you pour a pint of it, you know what it looks like. But this one's got the little tiny hint of lime with those Motica hops, but it's a really easy, smooth drinking lager beer. So it's a fantastic crisp, clean, refreshing summer beer. This one, I mean, it's just almost like goes down too smooth. Um, but you still get that like kind of lager crispness. I mean, it's so clear, it's like ridiculous. It almost looks like water in there. My brother is actual fraternal twin, but he and I look a lot alike. So people think we're identical, especially when we were younger. As we've grown older, my brother like grew out his beard and stuff, so it's a little bit different now. But um, but yeah, we look a lot alike. More alike than some identical twins. We sound alike. We're similar, height and mannerisms, I guess. But the but we have our differences, of course. But we're fraternal. But a lot of people mistake us for being identical. So if you were to hear him, like you'd almost think it's me, just because like on the phone or something like that, because we're a lot alike. And it's funny, my mom is also a twin. She's also a fraternal twin too. So that usually skips a generation just because of the biology of the offspring. But my mom's a fraternal twin, and then she had fraternal twins, so that's pretty crazy. So she has a twin. My mom has a twin sister, and then I have a twin brother. So here we are. Excuse me. So yeah, if you're just joining us, welcome, welcome. Let me know if you have any beer brewing related questions and things. I am going over. I have four beers that I'm kind of showcasing and tasting tonight that I have on tap. So we're going through the whole flight of those. I have a couple of others that I'm going to be trying tonight as well. I also have a uh, oh, I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag. But for these two beers here, for those who are just joining us, I know a couple people just jumped on. The hazy and the blackberry sour actually entered into a competition, and I got second place in the hazy, which I was going for gold, and then I got third place with my blackberry sour. And so I didn't have a video on the blackberry sour. I've done it a million times before, but I do have the blackberry sour video on my page. I just didn't film it this year when I brewed this one. But it's the exact same process, exact same beer. Yeah, Ty, go ahead, man. Question on using leaf hops. Go ahead, man. I've used whole leaf hops before. I have Citra whole leaf hops in my my freezer right now. I also have Zeus, which my friend grew those. So those are fresh hops. They're not even dried out. So they froze them before the oils and stuff had kind of dried up. Orange microfiber. Have you ever brewed a recipe a second or more time and it was hugely different? I made a cream ale identical. I thought it was massively different. Sometimes that is, and it really could be a couple different things. It could be yeast health. It could be, did you make was your yeast healthier the first time that you got it? Was it younger, I guess, and more yeast cells to brew it? Your temperature control is a big one. If you don't have the same temperature control while you're fermenting, I used to make, when I first started brewing, I always tell the story because I think it's worldly different. I used to make awesome beer in the wintertime and I didn't understand why. And then in the summertime, all my beers kind of tasted like homebrewy taste, right? And a lot of that had to do with temperature control because I didn't have a fermentation chamber and I was just kind of putting it in one of my basement bedrooms at the time. And I didn't realize that the ambient temperature of the room wasn't the same as the temperature inside the bucket. And so although I'd brew a great beer during the wintertime because my basement stayed cooler in the 60s and the beer that itself stayed in the 60s, in the summertime, maybe that room got closer to 70, but the beer inside, because of that fermentation action, was probably over 70, which was creating some off flavors because of the yeast I was using. So, yes, the short answer, yes, I have done that before and had different results. But the more you can kind of be consistent with temperature control, maybe making a yeast starter or pitching a couple of different packs if you think that your yeast might be a little bit older. That's the way to go. But every time you brew something, it's going to be a little bit different. And so we're not, I mean, I guess as you get more and more skilled as a brewer, you probably will be able to replicate the same batch. But I mean, you're going to use different malts sometimes. You might get a different sourced hop one time. So everybody thinks like Chinook hops or Cascade or whatever, they're all the same. Well, if you get one from one company and then you turn around and get a same hop from a different company, or maybe the alpha acids are a little bit different, like that beer is going to range a little bit. So you have to really kind of pay attention to, all of those type of things when you're putting a recipe together. So, I mean, they can be different. Yes, absolutely. Now, I think the wild differences, like you're talking about, like what make massively different flavors, probably has to do with a process of some sort, whether it's, a yeast health situation, whether it's a oxidation situation, maybe it's a fermentation temperature situation, that kind of thing. So most of the time when you have a very vastly different outcome, it's probably one of those things. So Ty wanted to know about whole leaf hops. They were pretty cheap. Any suggestion on using leaf instead of pellets? No, they're the exact same. The difference to me is it's not really precautions that any hop that you have, I would keep in the freezer anyway. So, and then I would get them as airtight as possible. So if you have a vacuum sealer, vacuum seal them. If you have and that's whether it's pellets, whole leaf, whatever, oxygen is the enemy of hops. And so is temperature kind of, right? So if you can keep them in the freezer, keep them in the freezer. If you can vacuum pack them, that's even better. With whole leaf hops, they have less surface area. The reason that pellet hops are really good is not only because they're small and condensed, but they also break apart in your wort. And so they have more surface area, and they don't float as much as the whole cone hops do, right? And so, sometimes when you're adding whole cone hops, a lot of the like brewer's friend or brewer father, that kind of thing, they ask you if you're using the T90 pellets or are you using whole cone hops, because there is a difference in how much of the oils will get out of the whole leaf hops versus the T90 pellets because of the surface area. So it might do the math for you there. If you're not sure and you're just following like a recipe, and normally the recipe would have used like T90 pellets, what I would do is go ahead and just add about maybe 5 to 10% more. So if you're doing like an ounce at a certain level, maybe do like 1.1 ounces or something like that. That will kind of make up for the lack of surface area on a pellet. Now, if you can put it in your grain father or brew father, or I use brewer's friend, then what you would do is just put in that you're using whole leaf hops, and that would account for that. But make sure you have the right alpha acids and that kind of stuff from the bag. So if you bought them, they should have an alpha acids number on there. Make sure you're punching that in specifically into your recipe builder. Also, whole leaf hops float. So if you're using them for dry hopping, make sure that you're weighing them down in some case. I actually use those sous vide magnets where I attach them to the side of a fermenter. You've probably seen those on my videos. And so you can actually put one of those in a dry hop bag with those whole leaf hops, and then put another one outside the fermenter, and then like drag the magnet down the side and make sure those hops get nice and submerged in the beer, so they're not just sitting there floating on the top. They'll still work by floating on the top. You can still pour them right in there even if you don't have a bag if you want to. But that's what I would do, is try and get those submerged as much as you can. Some people use like marbles or something like that they can sanitize and throw in there just to get them down on the bottom. But I like the sous vide magnets. They have a silicone outside, and then you can just make sure they get dunked in the beer. Yeah, they don't really soak up anymore. I mean, they do a little bit, but it's not a huge difference maker, because unless you're adding like 8 or more ounces of hops, I don't think it's going to be like a big difference soaking up volume all that much compared to pellets. Pellets soak up a lot too. They're smaller, so they're going to soak up there. You're going to get a lot of them on the bottom. But the whole leaf hops, they don't. I mean, they're dry. If you're using the dried out versions, maybe they will, because they'll kind of rehydrate. But not enough to really make a big difference. So I don't think that's something you need to be worried about all that much. All right, so we got our blackberry sour. We got that going on. Awesome third place medaling beer there. I got my hazy IPA, which I also have a pint of because it's so good. I brought a pint of that one. This one here got second place on, going for gold, but got second place again 2 years in a row. And then the year before that, I actually got third place. So I went from third to second. I was going for first, also got second. So can't complain, still got a medal in this one. Check out that video if you want to. That's my latest hazy IPA, and you can get that recipe if you're a member. All the other videos that have my recipes and stuff, you can see them right underneath the video. But if you join as a member, you get this one and a couple of other exclusive recipes. Hey, you're welcome, Ty. Anytime, man. Anytime. Any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat section below. Also, if you want to get a free sticker, as this thing's going along the bottom of the screen here, you can get a free sticker by emailing me. You can email me at Cityscape Brew, not Cityscape Brewing, but cityscapebrew@gmail.com. Excuse me. And I'll go ahead and send you guys some free stickers in the mail. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and shoot me an email. Here it comes along the bottom of the screen now. Shoot me an email at my Gmail account, cityscapebrew@gmail. Include your name and your address. I'll go ahead and shoot you some stickers in the mail for free. And then the stickers have a little QR code on the bottom. So when people scan them, wherever you put them, whether it's on your keys or and you can put them up at breweries or something like that, then they come to my YouTube channel and they can learn to make beer. So that's awesome. Spreading the love around. So cheers for the hazy IPA here. Always a good one there. Always a good one. Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it, man. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for jumping on. What's everybody drinking tonight? Anyone have an awesome brew story or a brew beer that they're going to be, a brew that they're going to be brewing soon that they want to talk about? I have, right after this tangerine keg gets kicked here in like the next day or two, there's probably like a pint or two left of this thing. I have my German Pilsner. That video is coming out shortly. That one's about ready to be kegged and then start lagering for another 4 weeks or so. Well, actually probably about another 3 weeks or so after this one. I just finished that one. I brewed it up last weekend. I thought it would be done enough to brew again this weekend, but it wasn't quite. I needed to do a diacetyl rest, so that's raising the temperature up, making sure that you don't get any of those butterscotch flavors or buttery popcorn flavors in your beer. So raising that lager temperature from the mid 50s all the way up to about 70 degrees helps you kind of get rid of some of those unwanted off flavors. I am going to be doing a video shortly on off flavors, and I don't know if you guys would think that's helpful or not, but there's probably like 6 or 8 really common off flavors. So oxidation, light struck, stressed yeast flavors, things like that I can talk about and how to prevent those. So I'm going to do a video on that here shortly. That's one I'm planning on doing in August. So I have that one coming out. So I have my German Pilsner. I'm going to be reusing the Trub of that one too. So I'm using the exact same yeast, but I'm going to be making a Vienna lager, and that Vienna lager is going to go, and I'm not going to use the same fermenter, but I'm going to take all that Trub, put it in a different fermenter, and I'm going to rack my beer right on the top of it, and save that Trub and reuse it. So I'll do a video quickly on that. So that's going to be awesome. And then I have a different beer that I want to make that I want some help with. So I think I'm going to put a post up this week asking a poll about which beer you think I want to replicate. And we'll talk about the beer options and maybe you guys can give me some feedback tonight on the fly about that. But my next video that's going to be dropping not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, or if you're a member already, you've probably already seen it on my page, is about a CO2 leak. A couple of weeks ago, I just had my 20 pound CO2 tank had a leak in it. And I ran out of CO2 overnight, just bang, just like that. And so I was PO'd, to be exact, because I just filled that thing up. I came out and all of my gauges were at 0. I was like, what is going on? I had a CO2 leak somewhere. I didn't know where it was. So I figured, you know what? Well, I'm troubleshooting this. I'm going to film it and we'll talk about how to find a CO2 leak and where I ended up finding that thing in that video. So if you're a member, you get to see that now because that's one of the perks of becoming a member. You can see my videos early, or it's going to be coming out on the 5th. So August 5th, which is next Monday for everybody else. So if you want to check that out, Let me make sure that's right. October. I keep saying October. August 5th. Yeah, Monday, August 5th. That'll be coming out for everybody else. But if you remember, you can check that out. That's on CO2 leaks and how to find them, and make sure that you have everything sealed up all right so you don't have a CO2 mistake like I did where you come out and everything's completely empty on you. And so I filled everything back up and I did a video on that. So that's going to be awesome. And then I've got a different, then I'll have my German Pilsner after that. Then I'll have the Vienna Lager. I'll have the off flavors video that I'm going to be filming. I haven't done that yet shortly, but that'll be in August as well. And then I have a different video where I'm going to pick from 4 or 5 kind of clone beers that I think people want to clone from around the country. And you guys can ask, or I'm going to poll the channel and see if you guys, as my subscribers and members and that kind of stuff, and see what you all want me to brew as far as kind of a clone beer. So some of the examples that I have, I'll share with them in a minute, but let me see if anybody's got any questions here real quick. So Kevin asked, my fermentation fridge died on me after brewing a Pilsner, pitched 3470 at 70, ended up pressure fermenting at 12 psi at 75, left a keg without cold crashing, fingers crossed it turned out okay. I have fermented in the mid 60s with 3470 for that cold IPA, and it doesn't have any off flavors at mid 60s. So 3470 is a little more forgiving than other lager yeasts, I think. You may not get quite the lager-esque flavors, if you will, from that, but I think pressure fermenting at 75 degrees is probably not all that bad because you pressure fermented. So I think it's not so bad. You might be all right with that, and I don't think you're going to get a ton of off flavors with that, but it depends on how high it got before you started pressure fermenting. But I don't think you'll get a ton of off flavors, but we'll cross our fingers for you. I think you'll be all right there. Awesome, Charles. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining as a member. Charles now gets the videos early, and he gets some access to the exclusive recipes like the Hazy IPA, man. Welcome, Charles. Appreciate you. So Orange Microfiber said, my homebrew club did an off-flavor tasting kit as a group. I did that too, by the way, for my homebrew club. That's awesome. It was hilarious how much other people were grossed out, but it didn't bother me that much. Do off flavors bother you? It depends on the off flavor for me. I did the same things. You get those little vials and you crack them into like a light beer, and then you can try to taste what like diacetyl tastes like, or light struck or something like that. Some of them are really gross, like sulfury flavors, that kind of thing. Some of them are less noticeable. Depends on what kit you had. I found that some of the little samples, we almost needed to put 2 in to be able to reliably tell in the beer, because some people are more sensitive to diacetyl, for instance. Some people prefer the taste of diacetyl. Some people love that flavor, and so it's, to them it's not an off flavor. But it is an off flavor even if it's pleasant for you. You don't want to have that in your beer at all. But some beers have a little bit, or some styles I should say, have a little bit of diacetyl as part of their style. That's actually part of it. But for most 90% of your brews, you're not going to have that. But yes, I think it's a great idea. Doing the homebrew club off flavor tasting kits. I mean, they're like $160, and they're making a lot of beer, so you don't want to buy that like yourself for like your own education. But if you did it as part of a group of people, it's an awesome idea. So I think that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about with that off flavor series, or at least video. I'm not going to do a series, but like a video where I talk about the most common 5 flavors, because I've tasted all of them. I did the tasting kits, but I've also just tasted beers that had most of those things. So I can kind of talk a little bit about it from some experience, because some of my beers had some of those off flavors. And now that I know, I can brew it, making a little bit better beer. Putting a membership candle on that keg for the birthday boy. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I will tell you, the people who are supporting the channel, become a member, whether it's doing a super chat, whether it's sending me a beer on it helps the channel more than you think, because YouTube doesn't pay you that much for views and that kind of stuff, and it is a lot of work putting out the videos. But I will tell you what, I appreciate doing this. I actually come on more than anything on my Sunday nights like this to kind of hang out with you guys. It's not a huge revenue maker for me, but I like to just kind of sit back, have some beers, and talk about brewing. That's just my fun hobby anyway. So why not share it out? But I appreciate all you guys who are help support the channel. I appreciate it. Regarding CO2 leaks, do you think it's dangerous and likely enough to justify a detector? No, no. CO2 is not real expensive. I get my CO2 filled, by the way, from an oxygen place that also provides like welding equipment and oxygen supply for people who need oxygen tanks and stuff like that. And so it's relatively inexpensive. Even my 20-pound tank is only about like 25 bucks to fill up. My 5-pound tank, they charge me, I think, like 15 or something like that. You can also get CO2 tanks refilled a lot of times from like fire safety places that will do like fire inspections and stuff like that. So sometimes fire departments will do it, but you have to call around. Those are the cheapest places. Homebrew supply stores, if you want to support them, absolutely do that. They're not the cheapest place to do exchanges or refills of your tanks. But no, I don't. The detector that I would have for CO2 is not dangerous enough. You exhale CO2. I mean, it's not dangerous in that fact unless you're like have your like a room that you're fermenting in that's really small or a closet that's like airtight. Um, my fermentation chamber gets CO2, basically fills the whole thing of CO2 because as it's fermenting, it's pushing out oxygen out of the lid somewhat. And and so when I open that up, sometimes it's like all CO2 and I can kind of tell, but that's not dangerous enough. I mean, if you're taking one whiff of big thing of CO2, you're just going to feel like, ugh, and then you're going to back up and you're going to get some air. But no, I don't think it's dangerous. For CO2 detection, a lot of times to find leaks, and I talk about this in that video, you can try it out. Just use some sanitizer, spray some connection points down and stuff. That's probably the easiest way right away, but I go through and like what I would look for first and how to find a CO2 leak if you have one, because there are some specific places that will leak first. And so those are the places that I would check first, and then most likely that's the culprit, and then kind of work backwards. Brewing Guide said I had that happen to me one time. Factory hose clamp blew off, and I lost 20-pound CO2 tank. Oh man, it's never fun to see that. It's going to happen if you've been brewing long enough. You're just going to have one of those. But yeah, you're gonna make sure all of your clamps and stuff. Sometimes I have a what do you call it, jockey box, and we use that for a lot of club events and stuff. And before I put CO2 in those lines, because I don't use them but like once a year, I will put I will hook it up to a 5-pound CO2 tank and I will actually dunk all of the lines underwater in a big bucket or something like that just to check and look for bubbles, because I don't, go down and hand tighten all of those clamps again, but there's a lot of them in there. So rather than like spending all my time like tightening all the clamps and just praying that they're all working, I just dunk them in water or Star Sand or whatever, and it will show the bubbles if it's leaking. So that's a good way of doing it. If you have access to dunk your lines in water, that's a better way of doing it. They wanted $65 here in LA at a welding company shop to fill a 5-pound tank. Went to Bruce shop for 25 bucks. Absolutely, Alfonso, absolutely. Yeah, so get it as cheap as you can. The place I go is really cheap compared to like my homebrew supply store, which I don't even think exchanges 20-pound tanks. They only do the 5-pound tanks. I keep one of each because I do some events where I bring the 5-pound tank, or I use my 5-pound tank to like purge some kegs, or I use it to purge like fermenters or something like that. If I'm transferring it, like especially for something I'm doing fruited sours or something in, so I will do that in a pinch. But I use my 20-pound tank just basically for either pressure ferment or not pressure fermenting, but pressurizing and carbon up a beer really fast at like 25, 30 pounds of pressure, maybe even 40 pounds of pressure. And then I also use it just for serving. So that one sits on the floor, and that's my normal serving tank. The other one I use for everything else. But it's also nice because in between filling my 20-pound tank, I can always hook up my 5-pound tank and use it. Or if I think I have a leak, I can switch to my 5-pound tank, and now I've only emptied my 5-pound. I'm not going to lose the 20-pound tank. If I think something has a small leak in it, I can quick, change that out and then say, hey, I will figure this out. But if I lose all this CO2, it's going to be 5 pounds, not going to be a 20-pound tank. Yeah, that does seem way too high, and I wonder if anybody actually like fills that. Now, if you buy the tank along with it, I could see spending $65, but maybe that's because they were wanting to sell you a tank. But the place I go actually just does the exchanges, so they will give me a different tank. Some places like a fire safety place, they'll actually take your tank, fill it, either right there or they'll like tell you and they'll call you and say, hey, we're going to fill it on Tuesday or something like that. So come back then. But you can leave it. So it depends. I've done both. Does AB leave AV excuse me, I can't even talk tonight. Does ABV level determine how much yeast nutrient you put into the boil 5 gallon batch? No, no, it doesn't. You don't want to add too terribly much, but I add a tablespoon usually at the end of the boil. I do about 10 minutes left in the boil. It really doesn't matter. But the yeast nutrient is really just giving your yeast more stuff to eat and be healthy, right? The pack that I buy, sometimes it says like a tablespoon per gallon. I'm not putting like six or even 5 tablespoons of yeast nutrient. A lot of the yeast the yeast is going to get nutrients from the grains that you use anyway. So unless you're like doing a seltzer that doesn't have any like nutrients on the grains and stuff, then you need to add a lot of that, right? But if you're going to be brewing like a normal beer, even if it's just straight two row or pilsner malt, you're going to have enough nutrients in the sugars and stuff off of those grains where you don't have to add too much yeast nutrient. The yeast nutrient, to me, I just add a tablespoon. That's really optional in my opinion. Um, and I only really add it when I'm doing like a dry yeast. I shouldn't say that. I add it a lot of times anyway, but when I do a yeast starter, if you guys have watched my kind of little proper starter video where I make the canned wort, that I add yeast nutrient in anyway, right? So you're adding yeast nutrient in the starter part, and so you can see that you're adding that, and that will kind of transfer to some extent. I decant a lot of that beer, that old spent beer off anyway, but you'll get some of that yeast nutrient in there. But I still add probably the tablespoon every time I'm doing it, just because I have it on hand. But I don't think you need to go over the top and do like six, tablespoons. I would probably just do 1 tablespoon, 10 minutes. That's what I do every time. Totally fine. But I think it is, I don't, if you don't have it on hand, do I think it's necessary? No. Do I think it helps? Yes. Or I wouldn't add it, right? So I don't think it's, super, super important if you don't have it. It's an optional thing, but I think it just helps prevent some of those stressed yeast off flavors, especially if you're using like a dry yeast and you want to start getting going right away. Having that yeast nutrient helps. Yeah, and brew shops, that's typically what it is, about 10, or excuse me, for a 5 pound tank, it's about 15 to $25. Most of the time I've seen them for like 19.99 or $25, like you said, Alfonso. I think that's right on par for what the brew shops do. Plus, I do like to support the brew shop. So if you have a local brew supply store, absolutely do that. I mean, they don't get, there's not a lot of overhead on the grains and stuff that they sell. And so I think what you're doing is important to keep them guys afloat. So I'm just thinking for my 25 or my 20 pound tank, it's just cheaper going and getting it exchanged somewhere else. Mainly because my brew supply store doesn't do 20 pound tanks. Yeah, you know what? I actually looked at air gas and it's not cheap. I don't use air gas either. I have a different company that's a local place that I fill up mine for, and they do oxygen for all different kinds of stuff and welding equipment. So that's kind of where I go to fill my CO2 faux show. Sonny man, what's up, man? Thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it, man. Today is actually the day of my birthday, so that's awesome. So we have I didn't really do a whole lot of beer drinking earlier today because I did that yesterday with some friends and my wife. We went to a different place in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a couple hours away, but we drove there just to check out the beer scene and have some good food and do something different for the day. So that was fun. We just kind of hung out and have some good brews. I'm on the last one of my flight here that I started. So I had 4 beers here when I first started. For those who are just joining us, now I'm just on my last Mexican lager. This is the video that I did recently. If you haven't checked that out, go do it. It's an awesome, really crushable summer beer. It's got a little hint of limes at the end with those Motica hops. really good summer beer. I had two beers that are now finished, my hazy and my raspberry sour. The hazy I have a whole pint of because it's so good. I grabbed a whole pint of it. That one I actually got, excuse me, second place in a medal just recently, and so that's awesome. I was going for gold, and so I will admittedly I'm a little disappointed that I did not get gold, but I'll share my screen again. I did get second place for the Death by Fruit Hazy. This is the back of them, just showing my name and stuff, and then the third place for the Blackberry Sour. So if you want to check out those videos, those are on there. The Death by Fruit recipe is for members only. So if you are a member, you get to do that. So like Charles, who just joined, Ty, who is on here, those guys are members. They've got access to that recipe. For everybody else, you have access to the video, but just there are certain recipes I kind of keep for members only as kind of exclusive recipes. That one is one of those. So like my Mexican lager, you can go on, you can watch a video, you get the recipe right on the bottom. For the and I did put this one in the competition too because I think it's awesome. So check it out. But I do have a couple of exclusive recipes for members only. You can check it out if you hit that join button, become a member, helps out the channel, but also you get some member perks. So we were just talking about that CO2 leak. We have that video that's on there right now. That one you'll be able to watch right away because it's on my channel already. And if you're a member, you get to go watch those in advance. Also, for people who are just jumping on, if you want a sticker, if you're new to my channel or you just haven't had one yet, feel free to email me. I'll get you some free stickers. You can put them at your keyser. You can put them around at different breweries. They have a little QR code. People in my channel, but it's a little round sticker. It says Cityscape Brewing. Looks like the little logo that's right up here, but it's got a little like QR code at the bottom. That one will be. I'll put you about a handful of them in the mail, and then you can go get those and put them on your keyser, put them in different places, hand them out to friends, whatever, and it gets them back to my channel to talk about how to make beer and homebrewing and stuff. So a good way to spread the news, but I'll send you some free stickers in the mail for free. So look at the little video as it's coming down across the screen on the bottom right here. If you want a free sticker, email me at Cityscape Brew, not Cityscape Brewing, Cityscape Brew at gmail.com. And so I need your name and your address so I can send you some stickers. No matter where you are, I don't care if you're local, I don't care if you're international, I will get you some stickers and you can send them to your friends. So feel free if you're local or excuse me, if you're domestic or international, I don't care. Email me, I'll get you some stickers. But with that, does anybody, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Happy to answer any beer-related questions, brewing-related questions, or if you just want to know something about me, happy to answer those too. I'm an open book. So with that, I'll open up for some questions and stuff, and let me know if you guys are brewing anything or if you want to see me brew anything different, right? So let's talk next, I think, a little bit about some upcoming beers that I'm doing, but also I have a poll I kind of want to put out this week, but I'll give you guys a sneak peek of some of the beers I'm thinking about cloning, and then you guys can tell me what's going on and what beers you would want me to brew. Greenzo, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hey, I will tell you what, this hobby has got me hooked for the last, I've been brewing now since, what, 14 years now, 15 years, something like that, since 2011, 12-ish, something like that. And yeah, I will tell you, it just gets, I'm better at brewing now after that length of time, but when I first started, there wasn't as many brew channels and stuff to like watch, and so when I was kind of piecemealing everything together, that's why I started the channel. Is basically like, hey, what can I bring to this to help other people move quicker than I did and making better beer? So I wish I would have known, XYZ when I first got started. That's what the channel's all about, is helping you guys become better brewers, man. So that's awesome. You brewed the Oktoberfest tie. Awesome, man. That's a good time to do it because Oktoberfest is actually in September, which I'm going to Munich, Germany, and September 20th. So I cannot wait. It's under 2 months away, man. I'm pumped to go. We're going to Germany. We're going to Munich for Oktoberfest. We're going to Pilsen and going to the place that invented Pilsner. We're going to Cologne. We're going to where they started. What am I trying to say? Kolsch beers in Cologne. Then we're going down to Paris. Then we're going to Brussels and doing a chocolate beer tour in Brussels. That's gonna be awesome. I cannot wait. It's gonna be the trip of a lifetime coming up in 2 months. So cannot wait. But that's gonna be cool. Tell me how the Oktoberfest turns out, man. It was a good. I've done a couple videos on that. So if people want to start brewing up an Oktoberfest, now's the time to do that. So it's done in time, man. Very cool. What got you into YouTube? I've contemplated it. Just to have more people to talk to. You know, my personal reason for getting on YouTube was really to help my homebrew club. Like I was an education person for my homebrew club, and it was during COVID, and we weren't meeting in person at the time, so we were doing like these Zoom calls, and it was hard to like talk about like topics. So instead, I said, well, what if I like filmed like stuff on equipment and a to Z brewing kind of demo, and I started doing a couple of videos, and I realized how fun it was, and I started getting a lot more traction with other people, and so I just kept it going, and here I am. So I didn't want to make the channel based on our homebrew club. I did make it separate on purpose, but it was kind of that reason why I got into it. But here I am. We're going on like 2.5 years later, and still going strong. So man, I'm super happy with how the channel is developing, and the fact that it's helping people out, right? So my channel isn't really about like, flash and bang. It's more about how to brew and how to do it successfully and things that you learn along the way and teaching people stuff that I wish I knew when I first started getting brewing. So that's kind of where it was. I mean, I did extract brewing for a long time. Switched to all grain brewing, never looked back. But I mean, everything from CO2 and kegging all the way up to first day of all grain brewing is on my channel. So happy to help out. I even have one on extract brewing, a video on that too. So if you're just new in the channel and you're looking at doing that, that's what it's all about. Ba-ba-bum. What's the worst beer I've ever made, and what did I learn? So, yeah, Green Zone, good question. I've had to dump some beers. Um, some of the worst beers I've had were from off flavors that I didn't know at the time of what I was doing. I had a lot of over either oxidized beer for certain reasons, or I would say the most off flavor and the most common off flavor most people get is from not having fermentation temperature control. And so that you, I have a video on like it's called Your Beer Got That Homebrew Taste. That one's all about like water additions and stuff. And although that's important, I don't think that's the most common off flavor for people. I think the most common is you didn't have fermentation temperature control and your beer yeast was giving off flavors because of the temperature inside your fermenter. And so I had several that were like green apple-y flavored or cardboardy because of oxidation or something like that I've had to dump. But that's only a few handful of beers. Some of I choked down, even though because it's like, hey, I brewed this for how many weeks or months, and I want to drink it, even though it's not something I would drink now. But recently, Greenzo, if you just checked out one of my more recent videos, I dumped a beer because I actually learned I hadn't used lime zest before in a beer. And because of that, I over zested and over limed it. That one, there was no going back from that. It was way too lime, and I ended up dumping that beer actually recently. So, I mean, after 15 years of brewing, I still brewed a beer that I had to dump. So, I am not ashamed to admit that. It's just something I hadn't done before, and there we are. So, hey, bear with me for just a second. I'm going to go grab another beer real quick, and I've got to do that so I don't. This is my last one, so I'm gonna go grab a different beer real quick, and I'll be right back. Hang tight, drop any questions, and I can answer them when I get back. Give me 2 seconds here to grab another beer. 1 second. All right, sorry about that. I had to get a full pint of that Mexican lager. Is a good one. I should have actually grabbed the tangerine so I can finish that up, but thanks for bearing with me, guys. Appreciate it. Speaking of choking down a beer, I made a super weird, terrible beer. Accidentally found out it was decent with about 10 milliliters of orange juice. I don't know what the 1.5 is, but yeah. So, I mean, one thing I did about the lime zest one is I actually said if you wanted to, if you overdid it a little bit, you can kind of mix it with a different beer. And so I did do that. I tried it in that video, and I even shared like how I thought about it. Excuse me. But even that was like way too lime. Even with like a little bit of my beer and something else, I ended up just dumping it. I've got enough beer. But that one, I felt like I'm not gonna not put this on YouTube. I want people to like see like even after how many years of brewing, we all mess up beers. We all make mistakes. We all do something that we wish we wouldn't have done in a beer, and it turned out like crap. And so that's one of the things that like I wish more people would do, because people are just watching these people brew and they think every one of their beers they make is awesome, and it's not always the case, right? I mean, obviously I brewed 2 award-winning beers. They got 2 medals that I entered, but I also dumped one this month. So I mean, there's that, right? That one wouldn't have got any medals, and they probably would have been like, why did this person submit this beer? It's gross. Oh, 1 out of 5 stars. I was like, what is 1/5 of what? Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't picking that up. But yeah, 1 out of 5. Yeah, right. So if you can make it a little better and at least drinkable with some orange juice, why not, right? I mean, it helps you salvage a beer. I mean, you put in hours of work making it, and everybody wants to try to drink it. Yeah, but this Mexican lager is awesome. Very easy brew too. I mean, lagers in general are like easier. Like Pilsner, this German Pilsner I did was like ridiculously simple. The Mexican lager, same thing. Um, so those are awesome. Have you ever done any wine fermentation? I'd like to make some for my wife as a gift. Yes, actually, the very first thing I ever made, alcohol related, I should say, was wine. So I did a wine kit. Me and a buddy of mine back in college, we made one of the wine kits. My mom and dad actually used to make their own wine a few decades ago, I should say. And so I said, well, let's try and make a wine kit. So we bought, the glass fermenters and the racking canes and all that junk, and we made a wine. And I think I made a Pinot Grigio and a Pinot Noir or something like that. And that one, yeah, it's been a while since I've made a wine. I don't make it now, but it would be something. I asked my wife; she's a wine drinker, and I was like, "Do you want me to make some wine? We could do that and make a video of it or something like that." And she said, "No, I'll just buy some bottles." So I was like, "All right, well, I'll just stick to beer then." But yeah, it's a kind of a similar. I wouldn't say a similar process. You don't need to boil wine, right? It's just fermenting it. And so, but it's all fermentation. It's really the juice that you get from soaking grains and stuff, your wort. You're basically taking the juice and making wine that way. Same with apple cider, right? So I did a hard cider video. You start with the sugary apple juice, and you're basically just dumping yeast and yeast nutrient and stuff in it and fermenting it until it's dry. And so you can back sweeten a little bit. You do that with wine too. You back sweeten after you get rid of the yeast and you kill the yeast off. You can back sweeten. So a lot of the white wines like Pinot Grigio or something like that, or even a Moscato especially, those would be back sweetened with sugar, so with sugar water essentially. And so we did that for the Pinot Grigio that we did. I think the Pinot Noir maybe a little bit, but not very much for that one, if any. But yeah, it's a similar process. It's an easier process. I will say wine sometimes takes like 3 months to clarify and clear out, so it's a little longer process, kind of like lagering, if you will. But the fermentation temperature, I don't believe is as important as beer is. But don't quote me on that. I've not made enough wine to know that if that's important or not. Speaking of YouTubers only showing successes, I've always boggled at videos claiming drinkable beers in 7 days or something. It only takes 2 months for me to be happy with a beer. 7 days is nuts. Yeah, the only so I will have my opinion on that too. So the my opinion of a beer in 7 days is that it hasn't conditioned long enough. And most of the time when you're trying to, like, some people will do them in like 2 days, right? Not even 7 days. They can brew a beer that can be drinkable in like a day. And could you get it to be drinkable? Yes. Is it going to be the best beer? No, not at that point. But they're trying to maybe rush it for, like an event or something like that. Okay, maybe. So you could, for instance, using Kvike yeast is really fast, and in some cases you can get like 80% attenuation or higher in like a day or two, like in 24 to 36 hours. But the problem is that every time I've used Kvike yeast, which is lots of times, um, yes, it crashes really fast, but those last few points to actually like finish out the beer, like you might get down to like 10-15 or 10-14, but you're really going to be ending at like 10-10 or 10-12. Those last couple of points, and by that I mean like your final gravity would be 1.015 or 1.012. To get those last couple of points out, it takes the rest of the 7 days. I mean, it really does. And so you're going to end up with a kind of sweeter than normal beer if you try to rush that. And your carbonation level, because you're trying to like carb it really fast, will be a little bit different than if you let it sit and carb up at normal 12 psi, which isn't as big of a deal, the carbonation part of it. But I still think all beer needs like a week to condition after fermentation. So if no matter what it is, it just needs to be able to kind of round off all those flavors and kind of clean up anything. It needs that extra week. And so after fermentation is complete, whether it is a cold crashing and keeping it in a keg and just letting it kind of round out the flavors, or if it is just letting it sit in the same primary, even at like the same fermentation temperature for an extra week, it needs that extra time. And so I agree with you. Could you make a drinkable beer in 7 days? Yes. Is it going to be the best beer? No, absolutely not. So you'll find that beer gets better after it's been sitting in that keg for another week. I tried the Mexican lager with Lutra. Absolutely, you can do that. I used a Mexican lager yeast. Lutra is a great one if you don't have fermentation temperature control. Um, Try to still, get that as cold as you can, but Lutra is a Kvike, so you can absolutely do that. You can just curious as Oh, hold on. What'd you say? Oh, sorry. I lost your comment there for a second. I was just curious, as I know you don't make a video on every brew that you do. No, I don't. I do on most of them. But of the ones that I do all the time, like the raspberry or the blackberry sour or different sours, I've got enough sour videos on my page now where I'm just not gonna keep doing that. But for most of my beers, I do change some stuff up. So even if it's like, excuse me, my latest hazy, there's some things you can pick out in my other videos where I kind of used one or two different things, like the same percentage of oats, for instance, like rolled oats I probably have in this beer versus the last one, but I use different hops and all that kind of stuff in this one versus ones I did before. And I do that for most beers. I try to change them, like whether even if it's just like a different yeast or if it's maybe a different malt, I try to change them just a little bit just to keep things different. I try to say, hey, I'm going to use a different hop that I haven't used, or maybe a different, malt for, coloring or mouth flavor or whatever. Or mouthfeel. I'm going to try to change something up just to try and see if it makes a difference in the beer. And in some cases it's better, in some cases it's worse, but it's worth putting out the video because it's different. It's a different beer, right? Even if it's a similar style. So I do film a lot of my beers. I don't do the ones I put on there all the time. So opposite end of the spectrum, what's the best beer that I've ever made? Um, I know this is going to be kind of cliche, but I really like a good IPA, even a hazy IPA. This hazy is right up there with the best of them. Um, I I've made a lot of really good beers that I don't know that I have like a favorite one that I've ever made, but I have a handful that really come to mind when I think about that. So the Celebration Ale from Sierra Nevada that comes out right before thank or right around Thanksgiving time through Christmas, and that's one of my favorite beers when it is fresh and it's on the store shelves. Is one of my favorite beers to get. That one I did a clone recipe 2 years ago. Then I tweaked it this last year, and I got it like spot on. That recipe is banging. That was a great beer to have on tap. That was one of my favorite ones I've done. The other was when I first started playing around with harvesting yeast, and I was harvesting the yeast out of the Bell's Two Hearted ale bottles, and I cloned both, excuse me, both Oberon American Wheat Ale. Even though that one wasn't my favorite beer, it was probably one of the ones that turned out the best, along with the Bell's Two Hearted. And I put those beers next to each other and compared them, and color wise, clarity wise, and even taste wise was like the same, because I'm using their yeast from their brewery to brew the beer because I harvested out of their own bottles. And so one of my favorite beers that I ever made and was very happy with was the Bell's Two Hearted clone that I made, because I bought a Bell's Two Hearted can, or not can, bottles, and I had them side by side and tasted them, and I actually I had my wife kind of mix them up and like don't tell me which one, just put them in opaque cups and I'll just pick from one. And I actually picked my beer as the one I liked more, which I was really surprised about because I didn't try them side by side yet. I thought that my beer was the original Bell's Two Hearted Ale, but I think I liked it more when I looked at it and I started like comparing them side by side, in both glasses, was because mine was more fresh. It was the exact same beer, but I think mine just hadn't been sitting in a bottle for like 2 months on a store shelf or something like that. So I actually liked mine. It had the awesome aroma and the flavors were all there, but I actually thought mine outshined the original, which I was very, very happy with. But that's when I started playing around with the harvesting yeast out of the bottles to try to use the brewery's actual yeast from their brewery, which was awesome. So those are kind of ones that stick out to me when I think of like all of the beers that I've brewed. But I have, better. So when I go to a brewery, or when anyone goes to a brewery, they have a certain style that they're looking for, first, that they're going to kind of see if they want another beer at this place, because if this beer's bad, I'm not getting another one. But I always kind of tend to gravitate right away toward like the pale ale or IPA, and then I will still get a flight of something else maybe, but like I like a really good porter, but I don't drink them as much as other people do, right? But I do brew a porter almost every year to have on tap. I really like, so lately I brewed a cold IPA. I'm going to do a different version of a cold IPA here soon too. That was a great beer. I think those are kind of the new hazy IPAs, if you will, because they're still like a bitter IPA flavor, but they're light and crushable, kind of like they look like this. They look like, like a Mexican lager or a Pilsner or a Kolsch or something like that, but they're still bitter and citrusy and piney and all that kind of stuff like you would get in a normal IPA. So that's awesome. But they're just brewed with lager yeast. So we're talking about 3470. That's the one I used, and I fermented that at 65 degrees for that cold IPA. So that video is on my page too, but that's one of the ones I like, more recent beers that I've done that I think is fantastic. That's a great beer. I was going to try to make a Hefeweizen for the first time. It should be fun. Awesome, my mash. Cool, man. Hefeweizens are a good beer. I actually had probably one of my favorite Hefeweizens I've had recently at one of local breweries. Those are ones too where like I like them. I don't know if I would brew it because I don't know if I want to have 5 gallons of it at the house. But again, I would probably do like a half batch or something like that of it, because I do think a Hefeweizen certain times of the year is amazing. Um, and that's one of the things that I'm really excited about going over to Germany for, because I'll be able to try that there and see how much different their versions of that are in Germany versus over in the U.S. And so in this case, maybe I just haven't had as good of ones as I'm going to be drinking over in Europe. And so maybe if I find some I like over there, I'll try to clone something like that. But I like Hefeweizens that are lighter on the banana clove flavor. I think that helps with the whichever yeast that you're using. But I like a lighter Hefeweizen that's just not too banana clove. Some people really like the banana clove flavor. I do, but subtle, and that's going to be, any Hefeweizen is going to have a little bit of that. Brewing bad. Cold IPAs are so good. About to transfer mine into off the yeast and into hops. Awesome, man. Yeah, cold IPAs are the new kind of craze over the last couple of years, and I think that you can't go wrong. Cascade, Centennial, and Chinook, banging. I like all of them. Um, yeah, I'm actually brewing a beer with Chinook hops for a competition that I'm doing that I do every year, and the secret ingredient that everybody has to use this year is Chinook hops, which kind of threw everybody off because usually it's been like some weird flavor that we've had to put in there. Like last year was like maple syrup. This year they're just doing Chinook hops. So I'm actually thinking about a beer I want to brew using Chinook hops, and I think I got a good one in mind. But I will also film that video too. But I don't know. I don't want to give away what I'm brewing with that. But I also like Mosaic a lot. Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, and Mosaic even in a cold IPA. Mosaic's one of my favorite hops, along with Cascade and Centennial. So, but yeah, that sounds amazing, Brewing Bad. Let me know how it turns out because I would drink that all day long. That sounds like a really good beer. Okay, so I want some opinions. I'm gonna be brewing up a clone of a beer that everybody has, and so I'm gonna be putting out uh, a poll on my page this week. So you can look for that and you can still vote. But what I'm thinking is brewing one of the following beers. So either a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, 60-minute IPA from Dogfish Head, Stone IPA, Zombie Dust, which I think is Riverbend Brewing, something like that. Um, Zombie Dust Cologne, or Lagunitas IPA, or the Stone Arrogant Bastard IPA. And so there's a lot of IPAs and pale ales. That's what on purpose because I'm kind of running out of that in my kegerator. But let me know which one you would choose if you had that. So Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, 60-minute IPA, Stone IPA, Zombie Dust, Lagunitas IPA, or Stone Arrogant Bastard. What do you all think I should do? Anyone think have a favorite of those that they want to throw out there? Those are what, 6 different beers or something like that. Sierra Nevada says Westward. Yeah, well, that's one that I have cloned before. I did my own kind of version of it, I should say. I shouldn't say I cloned it, but Sierra Nevada is also one that you can actually harvest the yeast out of their bottles because they don't. Three Floyds, is that what it is? Yeah, did I say Riverbend? It's a malt company. Three Floyd Zombie Dust. Yeah, so the Zombie Dust is one that I was thinking about doing. Hop Stupid. Lagunitas Hop Stupid. I don't know if I've ever had that one. I've had the Lagunitas IPA, but Hop Stupid, that's funny. Yeah, plenty of videos of Sierra Nevada. I think so too. I think I might switch it up and do something a little bit different. I might even do my own version of one of those, one of these beers, but kind of use like the kind of template for one of the beers. The only one I truly have the actual recipe for is Sierra Nevada. They actually put their homebrew recipes on their website. 2 of them anyway. You can get Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale and you can get their Torpedo IPA, but that's the only 2. So I had to kind of come up with my own when I did Celebration, but I used kind of some. Chinook is so underrated. I did a smash recently with Big Dry Hop, and it's so good. Absolutely, 100% agree. Chinook is great beer. It's still got some like citrusy notes into it, but it's still got that kind of piney taste too. So I think it's perfect in like a West Coast IPA or even a pale ale to keep kind of some of those piney notes, um, but also those citrusy notes. It's kind of like a Centennial hop, sort of, right? Zombie Dust says I'm a Hoosier. Three Floyds make great beer. Yeah, Zombie Dust is all Citra hops, I believe. So if I'm not mistaken, they're 100% Citra hops. Um, Stone's Arrogant Bastard IPA is 100% Chinook hops, actually, believe it or not. Sierra Nevada is all Cascade hops. I'm not trying to do a all one or another type of beer, but I'm trying to think of something relatively easy for people who want to make a clone of a popular beer style. Um, and I'm not sure about 60 Minute and Stone's IPA, the regular one, or Lagunitas. I'd have to look up some different clone recipes and see what they all have in common, and then try to figure it out myself by tasting it. So we'd have to figure. I'd have to figure out a few of those. Probably can search around the internet and come up with something that's really close for those. If I can't find it specifically, I feel like Stone has lost popularity, but years ago it was many people's favorite craft IPA experience. So my vote's Stone. Yeah, again. I think since a lot of people have had that beer, they may want to replicate that beer, and that's kind of why I put a couple of Stones on there. So Stone IPA and Stone's Arrogant Bastard, because it's widely available in a lot of places. Even though I'm on the West Coast or East Coast, excuse me, I've had it. Even though it's a West Coast beer in California, um, Zombie Dust I think you can get almost everywhere. Um, Sierra Nevada is obviously coast to coast, and then 60 minute IPA. 60 minute and 90 minute IPA. Those are Dogfish Head. I think they're in Delaware, and so they may not be on the West Coast. So I don't know if a lot of people over there have had that. They're not huge beer, but they may not have had that over in California. But I'm just thinking of ones that are relatively easy to get at the store, where somebody could say, okay, I'm going to buy this beer, I'm going to brew it also, and then I'm going to try them side by side, see how I did, right? So I'm trying to feel like that. So it sounds like I'm going to put up that poll, but it sounds like, at least from you all, um, there's a couple votes for Sierra Nevada, a couple votes for Stone, whether that be the regular IPA, and a couple for Zombie Dust. Seem to be the three more popular choices so far, at least on here. A main beer company clone would be cool. Yeah, I'm up for other suggestions too. I do like the. I want to see if I can find that Lagunitas. What did you say it was? What was the name of that? Uh, was the one that? Oh, Hop Stupid Alfonso. I kind of. I've never heard of that beer, and maybe it's just because the only ones you see in the stores is mainly their Lagunitas IPA. But if they have a Hop Stupid, I'm looking that up. That sounds like a funny, awesome beer. And Lagunitas does a pretty good job with their IPA, so can't be bad. So we'll see what happens. I know there's a lot of really good breweries and craft breweries, but I'm trying to think of ones that people could get like kind of coast to coast, and see if there's something that they could get and brew it side by side. I've done a lot of the Bell's stuff and a lot of like Bell's Too Hard and that kind of thing on my channel already, so I didn't put Bell's on there, even though I think a staple beer for a lot of people is the Bell's Too Hard ale, or even Oberon for their wheat ale. You haven't seen any Stone clones recently, so it might be a good one to do. Um, yeah, I'm thinking they kind of keep the recipes kind of close to the hip too. From what I was reading, I was looking at something, and this is the reason I put it on the list. I was reading some stuff about Stone and their Arrogant Bastard IPA, and they don't put a lot of information even on their website. If you look up Stone's Arrogant Bastard on their website, it says sometimes they'll give like the IBUs or their SRM or whatever on there, but their IBUs it says confidential or something like that, or classified or whatever it is on their thing. So they don't even want to tell you like how many IBUs are in there, but it's got to be like 80 or 90 or something like that, because it's a very hoppy beer, very bitter beer. But I also don't know if I would want to brew that bitter of a beer. I think some people are kind of turned off by that. Like one of the things like Elysian's Zombie Dust, or no, Space Dust, not Zombie Dust. I'm thinking of Zombie Dust is the other one. Space Dust from Elysian is a very bitter beer as well, and it's good. I think a lot of people like it, but it's like for some people it's overly bitter. So I'm trying to like reach the masses. I like it. It's what is that one? Elysian's from like Seattle or Portland or something like that. It's up there somewhere, but that one might be a little harsh for most people, but I like it. Well, you don't think they make Top Stupid? Maybe I haven't seen it. That's probably why. If they don't make it anymore, that would explain things. Want to make a clone of the '80s, '90s Michelob, the one that came in the hourglass bottle for wrapping. There you go. Good luck figuring that one out. Hourglass bottles. I wonder if you can even buy those anymore. That's really funny. Ooh, so yeah, we'll work on a different recipe. I've got a couple of things in the works anyway for the channel. Again, doing that off flavor stuff, I think is gonna be very, very beneficial for people. Just kind of learning why you get off flavors and what processes or things you should avoid or do to kind of prevent some of those off flavors. I think that's gonna be a good one. Um, I think this clone one, will be a good one. But I also, again, I have the German Pilsner coming out. I've got the Vienna Lager, which is an awesome fall beer. By the way, for those I know, was it Ty that said you were doing the Oktoberfest? That's cool. If you don't want to do an Oktoberfest or another great kind of fall beer that falls under that kind of category, it's not a Marzen, but is the Vienna Lager. So for this year, last year I did a pumpkin beer. The year before I did that, I did an Oktoberfest. I've had two different Oktoberfest videos on my channel. But the one that this year I wasn't going to do a pumpkin or a Oktoberfest. I am going to Oktoberfest, so that's gonna be awesome. But um I'm gonna do the Vienna Lager, and I figured that out after I went to a place that had a Vienna Lager on tap already, and I was like, you know what? That's a fantastic beer. I haven't brewed a Vienna Lager on my channel yet. Let's do it. So I got all the ingredients sitting in the other room, but I'm waiting for this beer, this German Pilsner, to finish up so I can reuse that trub. So that'll be another video, right? So reusing that trub. I have a video on kind of washing and reusing yeast that I did a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago or so. But that one is has to do with a lot of just washing the yeast and not just repitching it. And so we'll talk about the benefits and when and why to repitch yeast if you can. And so I'm letting that one do its diacetyl rest. I'll probably brew this week sometime and do that Vienna Lager. But again, it's another 6 weeks before that beer's coming out. So I got to brew it now, so it's done by the end of August, September-ish, when you want to drink those type of beers in the fall. So I'll have those coming out. So it's gonna be a really good one on deck. So then I've got this this beer, and then I've got the Schnook beer, whatever beer I brew for the Schnook hops. Also, so I've got like 4 beer videos, 2 non-beer videos that are coming out, the off flavors, and then the CO2 one that's already on my channel. So check it out. Also, anyone that's just kind of joining, hopping on, hopping off, we are talking about some different beers I'm maybe brewing, but also if you want some stickers, there's a little thing that's rolling down the bottom of the screen here. Send me your email with your name and your address to cityscapebrew@gmail.com. It's again Cityscape Brew, not brewing, but cityscapebrew@gmail.com. That way we'll get you some stickers in the mail and send them out. And you can put them on your keysers, throw them around everywhere else, and get the word out about home brewing and have some cool stickers. So yeah, we're kind of celebrate also my birthday's today, so we're celebrating the birthday. So birthday cheers to everybody. But let me know if you have any other questions. Also, let me know if you have any brews coming up, because love to hear about them. Love to hear what you guys are brewing at your house, and if you have any cool recipes and stuff that you're doing, because that's what it's all about, talking to other people about your beer and what you've done good, what you've done bad, or what you have questions about. Do you have any cleaning hacks? What kind of cleaning hacks are we talking about? Like on brew day cleaning hacks, or just in general? Um, so yes, I do. A couple things that I do, and this one might not be as apparent to most people, but one thing I do is I don't use PBW. Rarely use PBW. I use the OxyClean, but it's the free and clear one that doesn't have the um, dyes and stuff in it, and so it has a green top to it. It's OxyClean free. That stuff is about the same thing as some of the brew cleaners, but it is cheaper. So you can buy it at the grocery store. Just make sure it's the green lid free one, not the yellow lid like the normal one or some other variety that has like fragrances and stuff. But I use that. So cleaning is cheaper when you're using the OxyClean, and I kind of clean as I go. But I also, if I'm going to clean something, I'm going to try and clean a couple things at a time. Sometimes I'll have like a couple of kegs that I'm switching in and out because I have a couple of extra. I don't have to clean them every single time, but I don't let them sit open. I leave them with pressure in them a little bit so they're not nasty. But I have a keg and carboy cleaner that I use. I have a video on how to make one of those. It has a sump pump that sits in 3 buckets, so you don't waste as much water. Too is that you can put like a couple kegs that's got the keg connections and everything right on there. You put those, you flip them upside down on that thing, you let it run for like 10 minutes, but it's reusing the water. So that's a kind of a hack if I had to think of anyone. Cleaning lines and stuff like that in your kegerator, I hook up kegs to it. So, for instance, if I have a keg that I'm cleaning, I'll pour some of that PB or not, either PBW or even OxyClean, and I will pump it through the lines, let it sit in the lines for 20 minutes, then run through and rinse it out with sanitizer. So I'm cleaning my keg, but I have sanit or cleaner in there. I run it through the lines, let it sit while I'm rinsing and cleaning the rest of my keg out. Then I fill up the keg, not all the way, but halfway with sanitizer. And then I run the sanitizer through the lines too to rinse out the cleaner. And then I leave the line full of CO or of sanitizer until I hook up my next beer. So easy way of cleaning lines is not to buy one of those like line cleaners where you're like using a syringe and pushing it out. Just fill up a keg with cleaner, or not all the way. You don't even need to fill it up. Just like a fourth or even a half full of cleaner or sanitizer and run them through that way. You're just like you're pushing out a beer. Hook it up to CO2, hook it up to your regular lines, and push it out that way. That's much easier. But clean as you go also. Like on brew day, like clean up, man. You've got downtime during boils, during mashing, and all that kind of stuff. So when I get done with my mash and I'm in my boil phase and I'm in between the hop additions and stuff, I'm cleaning out my mash tun right away. I'm not waiting till the end. I'm getting the grains out of there, dumping them out, spraying out the ferment or the mash tun, cleaning that out. Getting my fermenters ready, that kind of stuff. And so the more you can do, by the time my brew day is done, the only thing I'm cleaning is my pot. And that's it. I mean, at the very end, I have everything else cleaned up already because I have downtime. Even when I'm filming my videos and stuff, I have enough time to film, do all that stuff, and then clean up at the same time. I mean, if you get pretty good at it, you'll realize like cleaning that stuff immediately is the best way to do it anyway. It doesn't get all stuck on. It's not harder to clean. You don't need to let things soak. If you clean it right away, it's still a lot easier than trying to clean up everything at the end. But yeah, it's just a process. Part of brewing is cleaning and sanitizing, and you're not going to get rid of all of it, but you will find that it gets easier the more times you do things. But I have videos again on how to clean your lines. I do the same process. I show you on the video how to do that. I have the video on my page about the keg and carboy cleaner, so you can go check that one out. That's a really cool DIY setup. If you have a sub pump you get on like Craigslist or on Facebook Marketplace or something like that for like $20, that's what I did. And then I just bought some PVC pipes and drilled some holes in it, and all of a sudden we got a keg and carboy cleaner. So that's super, super cheap and easy, but makes it way less painful than doing it all by hand and sticking your hand in all that stuff. I just let them run through especially a really gunked up keg. I just let it run through that. I mean, I sprayed out with like a hose or even in my sink for a little bit, get all the main stuff out. But then if it's like stuck to the sides and all that stuff in there, I'm just putting on that keg and carboy cleaner and let it run for 10 minutes. And I just let it sit there and run, and it will clean it all off. By the time you take that thing off, you'll be seeing your face in it. It's so clean. I'm thinking about doing a torpedo IPA next. That's a good one to do. They got their recipe right on their website, man. Go check it out. Torpedo. If you go to Sierra Nevada's page, or even if you say Sierra Nevada Torpedo IPA homebrew and Google it like that, it'll come up. So you can get that one. You can also, like you said, harvest the yeast out of their bottles. Use their same yeast. I think I used a West Coast ale or something like that one time, and it came out pretty close. So you could also do that. Any type of quote Chico yeast that they use in California. Recently brewed an apricot wheat light ale, and a cold IPA. Up next is And then the now up next is the cream ale. Okay, awesome, man. How'd the apricot wheat turn out? How did you use the apricots? Did you use fresh apricots or did you use something else to get the apricot flavor? Interesting. Thanks. I just asked because I had one of those brew days where I left it. It was like cleaning longer than actually brewing. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it feels like that. Depends how much you got to clean. I've had brew days where I'm not only brewing that day, but I'm also getting ready for transferring a beer into a keg or transferring something from a first fermenter to a second fermenter. So I'll say I'm doing like a sour and I have to put it into a secondary because I want to get most of the yeast out of there first. Then I'll use a secondary fermenter. That one, uh, you're going from one to the next, that type of stuff. So you're going to be cleaning. And so if you can reuse um, cleaner or sanitizer, that's the best thing too. Because if I'm going to fill a half a bucket of sanitizer up, I might as well use it for more than one brew day if I can use it back to back. I also then just keep a bottle of sanitizer spray around. That's the best way. Number one, I show how I use that on the CO2 leak video, but also just like in a pinch, spray in your tap handle, spray and other stuff like that. Having a spray bottle with star sand in it is you can't beat that. So save as much as you can. Every brew day I do, as I dump out the old star sand that's in there, and I fill it up with new fresh stuff just to make sure that's still maintaining its low pH and that can still disinfect stuff. But yeah, that's a good way to do it. I mean, you're gonna clean and you're gonna sanitize a lot, but you can get more efficient at it if you're doing more than one thing at a time, and then reusing that cleaner, reusing the sanitizer. That's why I always keep a couple of extra buckets on hand because I'll clean like a fermenter, then I'm going to dump that cleaner or sanitizer or whatever it is into a bucket, and then I'll transfer the other beer into that fermenter, and all of a sudden I can now clean the fermenter out because I have the cleaner from the other one, so I don't have to reuse, I don't have to, use more cleaner. So just keep a couple of extra buckets on hand to be able to do that too. Oh, you used apricot puree brewing bed. Awesome. I haven't used a whole lot of purees in beers before. I know a lot of people do for sours and stuff. Totally fine to do that. I use a lot of regular whole fruits or even mashing them up myself, but I haven't used a lot of the purees. And that's one of the things like I'd have to do some research to see how much is like, I don't want to put too much in. It's like the lime zest. I just winged it and I should not have done that. I should have looked up like what was too much. And I did not do that, and it ruined my beer. But the purees and stuff probably tell you a little bit about like how much to add in a 5 gallon batch or something. I'm sure. Like especially if it's meant for like adding to beer, like some of the brands are. That's me, man. Welcome. Finally nailed down a low carb beer for the wife, third attempt, and it came out pretty good. Came out on par with Michelob Ultra. Cool, man. Good for you. I've had a lot of friends that actually did lighter style beers and lower ABV beers on purpose. And that's also a kind of a talent in itself because, you have to think about how to get the ABV to be a little bit lower, whether it be mash temperature or a different way. Um, there is one person that did like a 1.5% beer or something like that that I had in our club. And so he had a real low ABV beer, and that's not, people were surprised how low it was. It still tasted good though. It still tasted like a beer, but it wasn't overly sweet or anything like you would think it might be because you're not fermenting all those sugars. But it turned out pretty good. This one is kind of like that Michelob Ultra. I mean, it's a Mexican lager, so it's a little bit different. But I mean, that's the it's a low ABV. I think it's like right around 5% or maybe a little bit low below that, and it's a light crushable beer. Really easy summer drinking beer. But that's that Mexican lager. So if you watch that video on my page, go check it out, guys. But sweet. Again, yeah. Anyone wants some stickers? Go ahead and email me. I try to get those out right away the next day. So if people are seeing that on my channel, I try to look on the next day. I send out all those stickers to everybody else and get those going. So getting out in the mail to you, so you get those right away. But yeah, you can send me an email to cityscapebrew@gmail. Get you some stickers in the mail. Finally nailed down the low. Oh no, excuse me, I'm reading your same one. All IPAs taste like bong water. It depends on the IPA, Daniel. So you can have IPAs that are um, dank tasting or bitter tasting or even multi tasting. So there are different IPAs, but bong water, it sounds like you're having some dank beers, or maybe you just don't like the bitterness in them. But that I would probably go for those, lagers or even like a pale ale that doesn't have quite as much bitterness. But there are dank flavored hops, which I'm not a huge fan of either. So there are dank flavored hops, and I'm not. There's a lot of. I think that was kind of a craze for a little while. It depends on where you go. But I'm not a huge fan of dank beers. They're okay. They have their place, but they're not anything I would brew a 5 gallon batch of for sure. But a good IPA with some bitterness is good for me. Final gravity was 0.990 DOS. 0.990, that's crazy. That's like under, so that's a super dry beer. What's wrong with bong water? Greenzo likes it. He said you could brew him some beer and he'll drink that. Enzyme in the fermenter. Okay, cool. To get that down under one. I mean, 1.000 is water, so I mean that's super dry. Very cool though. Um, and that's one thing we talk about a little bit in this video for both this beer, which is the Mexican lager, and my Pilsner, is getting that drier beer taste or drier flavor in a beer has a lot to do with the fermentation, or not fermentation, the mash temperature, right? So as you're mashing your grains in, everybody reads online, or you'll get a kit and they'll say, oh, raise your temperature up to this much so you can get your mash temperature to be 152. Well, 152 is right between those alpha amylase and beta amylase, and um, one will give you more of a sweeter beer, and that's the higher temperature of your mash. So if you're at the 152 or higher, or up into 158 range, you're going to get a sweeter beer because you'll have more of those long chain sugars where your yeast isn't going to be able to eat all of them, and so it will maintain some sweetness in your beer, and you'll have a thicker mouthfeel because of that. And so, like think of like a porter or a stout or something like that might have a mash temperature of 154, 156, or even 158, to keep some of those sugars from being fermented out. Where if you want a crisp, clean, dry flavored beer like a Pilsner or a Kolsch or a Mexican lager like this one, you're going to shoot for 148, 146, even that kind of thing, because you don't want any real malt flavors in there. You want it to be this dry, crisp, clean beer. And so in those lower temperature ranges, you get a lot of those shorter branch chain sugars, and the yeast can eat a lot more of those, right? And so in both cases, you're going to get a little bit of both amylase and beta amylase and alpha amylase. But in the lower temperature range, you're going to be able to get all of those sugars eaten and therefore drier, right? And so we were just talking about having a final gravity lower. That means there's no residual sugars left in there, and it's very dry, right? And so cider yeast does a really good job, or even wine yeast does a good job of like really cleaning up those sugars. And so, but in a beer recipe, getting down to like anything below 1010, 1.010. So if you get into the 1.009, 1.008 range, that's a pretty drier beer, right? So I'm expecting my Pilsner to be in that 1.008 range when it gets done here in a couple of days. And hopefully that's a drier, crisp, clean beer. So when you're having some of those light beers and you have a little bit of bitterness, but you get that kind of crisp bite, that's because the beer is dry. That's because they didn't have a mash temperature of 152. So just a quick lesson on dry versus non-dry beers and multi beers. I had a Mexican lager get down to 0.994. Holy cow, man. What yeast are you using? I just did the Mexican lager yeast from WLP something something. I can't remember what it is. 940 maybe. It's a Mexican lager from White Labs is what I used in this one. I think it ended at 008 or something like that. I could actually look it up here. Let me look at my brewer's friend. I'll tell you what it was. The actually I'll just my Google Sheets. I use my tilt um, hydrometer for that, so it will, and I use a Raspberry Pi, and so because of that, I do my. Where's my? Oh, Google just had said happy birthday to me too. Well, look at that. Aren't you nice, Google? I need to look for my sheets. There we go. So Mexican lager Ocho de Junio. Actually, that one ended up at 1.007. That's what it ended up at. 1.007 for my Mexican lager. That one was so this one here. It's a little bit drier. Not quite as down as 0.994. That's crazy. That's like very dry. Oh, you use the same yeast that you got it down. That's crazy, man. Wonder why. What did you? What was your? What was your mash temperature? Was it like way low, like 146? I think I did this one at 148, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it could be just that you had really good yeast health and it ate all those, but mine ended up. I was setting it down for a long time. I didn't. I didn't peg that any earlier than I normally would. I dry, or I see I raise it up for a diacetyl rest like normal. That should have actually helped the get it more active as it was sitting there too. But yeah, mine only got to 1.007. But I mean, that's about where I was aiming. So I don't know that I would got that low. It also um, sometimes can be determined by how high your original gravity was. So if you had a lower original gravity on your beer, the yeast would be able to be still active and eat up those sugars at the end too before it kind of died out. And so if you had like a very low original gravity in like the low 1040s or something like that, it could get that dry for sure. My next beer will be a Mexican lager, and I plan on using the 940 or possibly the Baja Dry yeast. Yeah, I mean, experiment away. I mean, I might do a different Mexican lager and do something different. I actually explained in the video for the Mexican lager I did this one. I did one last year I called Chips and Salsa. Uh, Chips and Salsa Cerveza because it had salt and it had poblano peppers in it. That was one of my favorite Mexican lagers I did. This one I tried to do on purpose, just kind of a standard lager yeast and lager beer. But last year I did the poblano peppers, and it's not hot. It just gives you that chili flavor, which is awesome. Um, and so you get that kind of salt, you get the corn in there, so you get some of that tortilla flavor, if you will, right from like the chips, if you will. So I added some sea salt at the end of the boil. I did the poblano peppers, and then I did a lot of corn. I think I did like 3 pounds of corn, flaked maize, and that. So that's why I called it chips and salsa. So you could have all three of those flavors. It was kind of like eating chips and salsa when you were drinking. It was great, but there was no heat. It was just the chili flavors in the beer. It was great. Have you ever had to calibrate your tilt? Yes, it's easy. So Danny, I have an awesome video um, on my tilt hydrometer. There is other videos though that Noah, I can't forget his last name, Noah Nyberg, starts with an N. He has some other ones on the tilt and how to calibrate it. And in that video of mine that I talk about the tilt hydrometer, I actually link to some of his videos. So the tilt um, it has a specific in the video that Noah does, I didn't do this in mine. They have a specific water to sugar. You use just regular table sugar, and you put a certain amount of table sugar grams. So you weigh it out, weigh out the water and the gram, or measure out the water, and then weigh out the sugar so you know it's exact. And then you have 3 different readings for those sugars. So the first one you do, I can't remember exactly what the calibration is, but then you can go into the Tilt app when your tilt is actually suspended in the beer, tilted, and it's on. You can go into the app and you can actually go to the calibrate part, and you can say, okay, I know this is because I know the amount of sugar and water that I mixed together. I know that this gravity is whatever it is, 1060, right, or 1.060, or 1040, or whatever it is. I can't remember the 3 that you do. But you have the 3 different measurements, and then you calibrate your tilt in the app under the calibration thing. Let me see if I can even find it. So well, actually, since I don't have anything, well, I might be able to pick it up from here. I'm not next to my tilt that's in my beer right now, but let's see if I can pick it up from here. I have my phone, so I'm going to see if I can see my tilt from here. Probably not. It's probably too far away for a Bluetooth connection. I'm not really close to my garage, but yeah, it's not finding it right now. But when you open up your tilt hydrometer app, you'll be able to see in this settings. See, it's not even letting me get to that because I can't pick one up. But I have 2 tilts, right? I have a red one and a blue one, and the if you go into one and you have one floating, you say, okay, select the color tilt you have, whatever, red, blue, whatever. If you only have one, that's fine. And then it'll have a calibrate option under the menu. And so you can do it that way. It's really easy to do, Danny. So if you haven't done it, let me know if you have questions. I'd be happy to help you out, or even send you the link to that video of how to calibrate it. But that's also, I know I have it linked in the tilt hydrometer video that I do. So if you've watched that video on my channel on doing the tilt, and then the Raspberry Pi that helps you gather the data every 15 minutes, that's a great way to do it. By the way, if you ever get a tilt hydrometer, one of the coolest things I ever bought. Again, it's not exactly perfect. It's not going to be right on every time. It might be a point or 2 off because you get trub and stuff stuck to it, but it's not super far off even when that stuff's on there. It's really giving you a baseline of like when your final gravity is done, how vigorous your fermentation is, when your kind of fermentation took off, that kind of stuff. So it's giving you like all these really good numbers to like start right away. And so if the tilt hydrometer is an awesome tool, I also would say that some people, they get it and then they're like, well, I have to be right next to my fermenter in order to check all of the gravities and stuff. It is a game changer to get the tilt and then get the Raspberry Pi. And the Raspberry Pi is a little unit that you have that you program. It's very easy. I go through that step by step of how to do that and share the videos of how to do that in the tilt hydrometer video. So look up the tilt, TILT, search my videos, you'll find that. But I have that sitting up in a cabinet in my kitchen because my kitchen and my garage share the same wall. So I actually put that tilt hydrometer, or excuse me, the Raspberry Pi, I plug it in actually in my house above my like microwave area, right? Where I don't use that cabinet very often. So I just put it up there and it shares the wall with my garage where my fermentation chamber is, and it can read it from there. And so it sits there and it's just always plugged in. Even though if I don't have a beer brewing, it doesn't matter. Just leave the tilt plugged in. Every time the tilt turns on, it will find the Raspberry Pi. And then you get Google Sheets with stuff every 15 minutes. So like, I'll show you. I'll pull one up real quick, kind of share with you what it looks like. So this is my Pilsner that's going on right now. And I get a Google Sheets with like the data. It's kind of hard to see, but with the data every 15 minutes. And then it also shows me like the chart of like the temperature. Right now you can see I'm actually raising the temperature up for a diacetyl rest. So that red line, it's coming in clear. So that red line is the temperature. It's very consistent through the fermentation, but now that fermentation and the gravity is ending, I've started ramping up that temperature for a diacetyl rest, so a couple degrees every little bit, and then it'll help that beer finish out. But I can tell every 15 minutes it gives a gravity reading, and then it tells me that my beer is at right now it's at 1010, so it's at 1.010. I'm expecting that to get down to like 008. This thing's not. There we go. Um, I'm expecting this beer to drop a couple more points, but I start raising the temperature up for a diacetyl rest early, and then that helps warm up some of those yeast, get them real active, and then helps clean up the beer. So that's really awesome. So, but yeah, Danny, very easy. Go check it out, man. Very simple to do. Room bad. I was planning on a 5.5 ABV, but ended up with 8.7. Holy cow! And I saw that you did it at 149 mash. You just must have had like a crazy yeast or something. That's nuts. Like I did a yeast starter on that thing and everything, and I didn't have my yeast didn't get down that crazy. I'm surprised yours did. And I do so I don't just use the tilt to find out like what my ABV is. When I actually transfer to a keg, I actually do use a hydrometer at that point. So I fill up a hydrometer tube and make sure that my gravities are right on. What's up, Enclave? What's going on, man? Hey, everyone in the chat. Fell asleep for a minute here, but I'm back on. Well, it's like really late, or if you want to call it early where you are, so that's totally fine. I have the red and the blue tilt for tilt hydrometer. So it's not the Tilt Pro. You don't need a Tilt Pro unless you need like the longer distance or you have a bigger, thicker walled fermenter. Most of them, I think they're like 135 bucks or something like that for the tip for one tilt, and then the Raspberry Pi is like 50 bucks or something like that. I can't remember what it is. I have the links in that tilt hydrometer to the ones that I use on YouTube or on Amazon. You can buy them, and so you can go check those out. Also in my description of this, also I have my Amazon store. So if you ever see me use stuff in a video, whether it be tilt hydrometers or pots or whatever, all of that stuff is linked in my Amazon store. It doesn't cost you any more money to get stuff from my Amazon store. It's just a way for me to share which items I use, and it does give a little bit of kickback to the channel, but it costs you the same exact amount. So if you were to search that, buy it, it's the same price as if you bought it on my shop, but you also get to see the same exact items I'm using and buy them through there. And it does give me a little kickback of like, it's like 1 or 2%. It's not very much. But yeah, I have a red and a blue tilt hydrometer, and then I have the Raspberry Pi. Thanks for the birthday wishes, Enclave. Thank you. It was an awesome birthday weekend. We didn't do too much, but it was fun. Kind of a nice, relaxing weekend. So pretty cool. Just finishing out with a bang and having some beers with some friends. So cheers. Just watching the tilt flat line as a game changer. Absolutely. Like just to kind of know where you're at. Like, hey, I was going to brew this weekend or transfer to a fermenter or transfer to a keg. And you're like, oh, wait, I need to wait a couple more days because it's not quite done yet. So that's awesome. So the wrapped pill, I know that the brew show uses that pill, and he had one that he gave away on one of his lives, and I think he had one sent to him for like a sponsorship or something of one of his videos. And I know he uses them, so I don't know if they're as good or better or whatever. I will say the tilt hydrometer. When I did the video of the tilt, I actually did the video on the tilt, and I wasn't planning on doing it because I had such awesome customer service with tilt. I had a battery that I had to replace in my tilt, and I opened it up. I bought the new O-ring, and for some reason, when I used it the next time, it leaked. And I got a little bit of wort in my actual tilt after I changed the battery out. And I thought I had ruined it, and I was really upset. And I took it all apart, dried it out. It still didn't work right. Put the new battery in. I emailed the tilt guys and said, hey, I bought this O-ring from you. Here's my number. I don't know if it was the O-ring's fault or if it's just me, or I don't know. But how do you think I should fix this? And the tilt guy said, hey, send it to me and I'll get it working or send you another one. and he refurbished it and he sent it back to me, and all I had to do was pay money to ship it to him. I mean, talk about awesome customer service. So I will say right now, I mean, the pill thing probably works. It's maybe very similar, but the tilt hydrometer people, I had that tilt for years before I had to have an issue, and I just happened to buy an O-ring from them for the top, and I don't know if it was the O-ring's issue or my own issue, but they made it better. They fixed my red tilt hydrometer and they sent it back in the mail. Whether I don't know if it was a brand new one, I don't know if it was a refurbished. I think it was. I think they refurbished it somehow, or maybe just gave me a part that I had damaged. I have no idea. But talk about awesome customer service. Like that's game changer for me. So I was like, you know what? I'm doing a video on the tilt hydrometer. How cool is that? So that's the whole reason I did it. But that's I really, really do like the tilt a lot. Greenzo, I'm going to ask the controversial question: liquid or dry yeast? I use both, so there's no difference. I mean, let's put it this way: liquid yeast is generally easier to find different varieties for, but dry yeast is becoming more common. I think even White Labs is coming out with their versions of the same liquid yeast, but in dry version form. Um, Liquid yeast generally has less cell counts than dry yeast. So most of the time with dry yeast, you do not need to use a starter. You still can if you want to. But now even the liquid yeast are coming in bigger packets where you don't always need a starter either, depending on how old they are. I still like to do a starter for my liquid yeast. I think it helps like the yeast kind of know what they're doing. It's like I use the term like you're stretching or running, or like before you go run a marathon, you're gonna like stretch and warm up. That's kind of like what you're doing with your yeast to trying to get them like used to, hey, like we're gonna start eating some sugars and creating alcohol. And so you're just kind of getting the yeast stretching out and warming up. And so I still like creating a starter for my liquid yeasts. So I wouldn't say that it's one or the other. I use both. I use a lot of USO5 for like sours and certain pale ales or IPAs. I might use that, but I use liquid yeast for all different kinds of different ones. I have the Mexican lager was a liquid yeast, but I think they also have a White Labs version now of the 940 in a packet. So you could probably buy it both ways. So I don't think it's controversial as much as it used to be. I think if you don't have a way of making starters and you're doing a big beer or a lager, sometimes the packets are better. So for the last couple of lagers that I did for the Pilsners, I'd use the 3470 yeast, which is Fermentus 34-70, or yeah, it's a forward slash or whatever it is, 70. That one is going to be a dry yeast, and I didn't make a starter for those, even though for most lagers I definitely would have. And so I don't know that it's super controversial as much as it was, but I use both. And there is benefits of dry yeast and the fact that you don't have to refrigerate it, right? I would still refrigerate it if you can, but it can be left out in room temperature longer than a liquid yeast can. And so if you can't keep it like that, or if you need to ship it, sometimes dry yeast is better. I use dry yeast for ease of use and storage. Yeah, absolutely. So same thing, but I do both. I use dry yeast for certain things. I use liquid for others, but both are have their pros and cons to both. Yeah, Enclave and Brunbad. Yeah, customer service, man. It made me think totally different about the whole company. I thought they did a great job, and I would promote them 24/7 to people just because of my one issue, and they resolved it. And I'm like, listen, it's $135 for a hydrometer. I mean, that's not a cheap deal. So for them to go out of their way to say, yes, you bought one of these, even though it wasn't recent, you bought one of these from us, and we want to show you that we're going to stand behind our product. They did, and I didn't tell them, about I was going to do a YouTube video or anything about it because they did that. I was like, I have to do a YouTube video, and they're not even know that I'm going to do it. Hopefully, they've seen it since then, but who knows, right? But awesome customer service, hands down. Green though, honestly, I bet in the last five or so, liquid yeast that will be a thing of the past. I don't know. Um, I think liquid yeast. So the dry yeast they have to make and then dehydrate it, packet it, all that kind of stuff. I think the White Labs is trying to get ahead of the other places like Omega and Imperial and others that have made a bunch of different liquid yeasts that are readily available. They just started making the larger packs to kind of compete with them, because before you always needed to make a starter with White Labs. It was like a thing. You just had to do that because they had the smaller little vials of them. But now they all have like the pitch packs. And so, you can pitch up to what, like a 1070 beer or something like that in most of those. But I think White Labs is just trying to get ahead of the other competition because they were kind of late to the game with even though they had a lot of styles and flavors, these other companies came out with bigger packets that you didn't need to create a starter for, and people thought it was easier, so they kind of they were late to the game with that. So now they're early to the game with converting some of those same things to dry yeast, and I think they will get some people who buy that because of the ease of use, right? So it's easy to use a dry yeast and easy to store a dry yeast. So I think people will jump on that bandwagon. So it's a smart move by them, but I don't know that it'll go away necessarily, the liquid yeast. But I get your point. I think some more and more companies will start drying that, but it is an expense. You have to dry the yeast and package it that way versus just pouring off a little bit in each pouch, which is already done, because the way you replicate yeast is wet. So you have to do that first before you dry it. So there is a drying process that those other companies just aren't use. They're not. That's not an expense of theirs yet. Thanks, Hunter, man. Happy birthday, he says. Appreciate it. It is my birthday today, so it's been a fun day, a fun weekend. Nothing too crazy, but having some beers and cheers. Thanks. Appreciate it. I've dealt with the company since day one. Never had an issue. Is it when there was, they solved it. I should get so upgraded to a 65 liter. Yeah, honestly, customer service, no matter what the brand is awesome. I will promote somebody all day long if they're going to go out of your way to make things right when you have an issue. Yeah, Hunter, good point. If you don't have a way of shipping the yeast, um, then yes, you're better off going with the dry yeast. We have a thankfully, local homebrew supply store that gets all of their yeast, at one time in a big shipment of cold, and so they keep it cold, and then we can, readily get it available for us at the homebrew supply store, and it's been refrigerated appropriately. But if you can't and you need to ship it, a lot of times, especially in the summer months, and living in Florida, you know what I'm talking about. It's hot, right? And so if you can't get that thing shipped with like dry ice in it or something, or frozen packs or whatever they ship it with, um, then you're better off with the dry yeast. The shipping for some of those yeast too is very expensive when you need to add freezer packs to it. It's like ridiculously expensive. And so some of the times in the summertime, I think they charge like 30 extra bucks or something like that to put a freezer pack in some of those. Don't quote me on that, but some companies do. I think it's as high as that, maybe 25, 30 bucks to be able to make sure that they can guarantee that your yeast will be cold when you get it. And then you have to get it too. Like once it's sitting on your doorstep, like it's out in the sun, that kind of stuff. So you got to make sure you get that, unpack it, put it in your refrigerator right away, so it's not sitting on your doorstep for 2 days either. But yeah, so I think there is a pros and cons of both. But if you can get it at a local homebrew supply store, there's benefits of liquid yeast. So, what's everybody drinking? Anybody have anything cool tonight? I'm gonna switch over to a different beer in a second because I'm almost done with this. Um, I've been talking a lot, so I need to wet down the palate here. Let's see what I got in my cooler here in a second. But yeah, I just finished my Mexican lager up. Great video if you haven't checked that one out. For recapping, we actually talked a little bit this earlier. I had a hazy IPA and a my raspberry sour, and I did metal on both of those. I put both of those in a competition, and I got third place for the blackberry sour, and I got second place for my hazy. And the hazy, I was actually going for gold because I got second place last year in the same competition. And there's 27 other hazies last year. I don't know how many there were this year, but I just found out yesterday that I got second place again. I was going for gold. Next year I'm going to get them for sure. But I got second place again for the hazy, and that hazy IPA is in the one of the recent videos that I did. So if you want to check that out, go for it. That one's for members only. So if you remember, like Enclave, like a few others that are on here, like Ty that was on here, like Westwood, who's on here, Danny that's on here. You guys can be channel members, and when you do that, you get Charles just joined tonight too. Westward Smile, not Westwood. When you get all of those perks as a channel member, you get the videos early as I drop them. So right now I have a video on CO2 leaks and stuff like that you can check out. There'll be my Pilsner ones coming up shortly. Those you get early as a channel member, and you get those other recipes that are kind of like the members only perk recipes. They're the secret ones that I only share with awesome people. So if it'd be more awesome, you're all awesome. But if you want to be more awesome, you can be a channel member and get those early. They're kind of exclusive recipes for members. But those are kind of member perks that I'm starting for people who want to become channel members. So I appreciate all of you guys that are doing that. It helps out the channel a lot. It's a couple bucks a month and helps keep my channel afloat, which to keep me pushing out more beer videos for you guys. So that's awesome. And it's an awesome birthday present if you want to do that today. But yeah, I have actually, speaking of Bell's Two Hearted Ale, we talked about earlier, I have one of those that I will, this one's a can, which you get hardly, I'm finding more and more canned Bells. They used to only have them in bottles, but canned Bell's Two Hearted Ale. So, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this, about how you go to a beer supply store or grocery store or whatever, and it's all about like marketing and what the label looks like and all that kind of stuff. And Bell's Two Hearted and some others, like Sierra Nevada and whatever, they've been out for so long that now their brands are so iconic that they really just can't change the label of their beers. So it's kind of funny that like Bell's Two Hearted has a trout on it, right? They're from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they got a trout on it. And now it's like iconic. But would you put this on a new label if you had like a new brewery or a new beer? Would you put a trout on the label? Like, definitely not, right? You wouldn't do that. But now that it's so iconic that people like recognize that they have to kind of keep it. And so it's really kind of funny that that they started that a long time ago before like craft beers were cool and or type of thing, and so they put that on their label, and now it's such an iconic symbol that they keep it. But if you were to come up with a new brewing company or a new label, you would never just put a trout on your label, right? You just never like, here we go, hey, you're just gonna put a trout on my label. I just don't know that it's like eye-catching from the store perspective of people like window shopping for craft beers. And so, kind of funny that was the label they chose, way back when they first started it. Absolutely, Brewing Bad. If you have a benefit to have a local homebrew supply store, definitely support them. Those guys are doing the work of many, and I will tell you, they don't get a lot of overhead on all of their ingredients. So the more you can support them, the better. I buy like sometimes 50-pound packs of grains and stuff. I have these little dog food containers next to me. These, I can't even remember what they're called, but I have these like dog food style containers that I keep grains in. Let me see if I can expand the screen so you can kind of see they have the lids on here. But these are like airtight, and I keep these in here. I keep these in here just because they're not in my warm garage all the time. But I keep these full, and so sometimes I'll buy a 50-pound sack of like Pilsner or two row or white wheat or whatever, and these can fit them. I also keep like the little extras of the grains that I have. I have some acidulated malt and some other like weird caramel flavors or chocolate or something like that, I'll buy like a couple of extra pounds because I know that once in a while I'm going to do like a porter and I want a couple of extra pounds of chocolate malt or something like that on hand. I also buy like flaked oats, but I buy it at like Sam's Club and buy the giant bags of rolled oats because it's the same thing. And I keep all that stuff in here. It just keeps them all airtight. It keeps them, so there's no bugs and stuff getting in or out of there. And then, but yeah, if you can buy stuff from your local homebrew supply store, that's what keeps those guys in business, keeps their doors open. So, um, do support them because you don't want those to go under because then you have to spend all of the money on shipping, which is a pain in the butt. So if you have one, definitely support them. The reason I bought the Weiss is it had a sick label. I don't buy what I can't make normally. Um, or I don't buy what I can make normally. Yeah, absolutely. Like that now it's all marketing. I mean, half of it's marketing. So you're not going to always have that, you know, flashy label with some of these other ones, but you know what they are when you see them on the shelf, so they don't have to worry about it. But the new guys, they have to worry about it. They like there's a brewery that is a local brewery of mine. They have a beer called "Cruising Down the Street in My 6'4", and because it called 6'4", like rap song. But at the same time, they have the beer is 6.4%. That's what it is, right? But it's not even their best beer. But they sell the crap out of it because of the name and the label, right? That's their easiest number one selling beer, period. But because of the label and the name, but it's their like seventh best IPA they've ever made. It's not even that good. Um, but it's because of the name that they do so well. So Bell's Two Hearted Ale, man, one of my favorite IPAs though. Bell's good brew place. And they don't filter their beers. So if you want to, you can leave a little bit of this. You can hear a little bit of the yeast in there. You can actually like pour that out and harvest the yeast out of their bottles or cans. And so if you pour it out slowly, keep that on the bottom. I have a whole video on how to harvest your yeast out of your bottles, cans. Go check it out on my video. What got me into homebrewing, Greenzo? I started doing video or homebrewing in general. Um, Good question. My wife and I, when we were getting married, we did the wine beforehand, right? So I did the wine. But as I was getting married, I was looking for presents for my groomsmen and I came across those little Mr. Beer kits. And I bought all of my groomsmen one of those Mr. Beer kits, but I also bought myself one. And so, I bought myself a Mr. Beer kit. I made the beer. I think it turned out like crap. I don't remember it, but I was like, hey, I was all excited, like, hey, friend, come over here and try my beer I made. Look at this. I made this. I don't know. It was just like a Pilsner or a Pale Ale or something. I think it was a Pale Ale. Well, it definitely wasn't a Pilsner because we wouldn't have had fermentation temperature control. But I think it was like it's just a regular Pale Ale kit that came in the Mr. Beer kit. And I was like, hey, I made a beer. Yeah. And I remember I put like regular table sugar in the bottles because I didn't realize that I need to use corn sugar and it probably made it sweeter. I don't know. Maybe it didn't. Some people probably do that, but you're supposed to use corn sugar. I did not do that. So I fermented this beer. I put in there, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, it's beer, but maybe you should come over and like, I have a couple friends that do some beer brewing. Maybe you should check out like the real kits on how to do that." So my friend of mine, or my wife heard about all that whole story, and she actually for that Christmas then, which was like 10 months later, bought me a big kit that had all the, glass fermenters, or actually at the time it was just buckets. I had the buckets and I didn't have a pot. I think I bought the pot separately, but I had all the buckets and the transfer equipment and the racking canes and the capper and all that kind of stuff in the kit. Bottling bucket and a fermenter and, air locks and all that kind of stuff. And so I did some extract kits. I lived in Minnesota and I could drive to the stores, Northern Brewer, which is a big supply store online, and Midwest Supply. They're owned by the same company, but they're still separate. But I could actually physically go to both of those places, which is actually pretty cool because they are online mostly for me now. I have bought stuff from them, but it's online. But now I have a different local store that I go to here. But I would start buying kits that I would see on their shelves, and I would just do some extract kits, and they turned out a lot better. And again, I had better beers than others, that I went with. But I started doing some different beer kits, and that's kind of really how I started getting into brewing. And I really didn't get into all grain for probably 2 or 3 years after that. I did a lot of extract kits first, but and then here we are. I think a lot of people got started on Mr. Beer. Um, yeah, I think I'm along with you, Greedzo. It wasn't good from what I remember, but I was like really proud. Like, hey, look, I made alcohol. Hey, I made a beer, and so I'm gonna drink it anyway. But yeah, it was. I will tell you that little kit started a whole thing, and now look at me 14 years later. So I mean, I think a lot of people got into brewing that way for the same exact reasons. But like Clive says, I was consider harvesting yeast, but didn't like the beer. I really want to try it. You can harvest yeast and use it at a different beer all day long, right? So you're just harvesting the yeast. You're not making the same beer. The yeast choice, depending on what it is, it could be good in a different beer. I've thought about harvesting the yeast out of bells like this one and brewing my own style of beer with their yeast because their yeast is awesome. It's like a really citrusy, good style yeast that has some, I would say, um, esters that are like fruitier and more citrus forward anyway. And so I think that that's why their beers are the way they are. They have a really awesome proprietary yeast, but they actually give you the directions on their own website and how to do it. And so I show you how to do that in some of my videos that I have about harvesting yeast, but that's the way to go. Harvested yeast is easy. You don't have to make the same beer because a lot of their beers are made with the same yeast. Most of Bell's beers, they use the exact same yeast in all their beers except for their, what did they say? It wasn't their wheat, it was their Belgians. All the same yeast except for their Belgians. Let's see. I'm gonna Miss Beer got me into home brewing. Can't hate myself yet. Absolutely got. I started on their long play IPA. Nice. Larry, we get 2 row from local craft brewery. They will also get you some used yeast if you time it right. Yeah, you could. Absolutely. I've heard of a lot of people going to craft breweries and seeing if you could get some Trub and just using their yeast off of it or something. Absolutely. But yeah, it depends on the craft brewery. I know a lot of smaller craft breweries that would be like, yeah, yeah, if you need a little pint glass, like we're dumping gallons of it out. Good question. How long does harvested yeast last? I've got some sitting in the sanitized mason jar for a month. No good or okay to use. A month is kind of pushing it. I would say 4 weeks is about the window I would say to use it. So if you're not going to use it soon, I would say pitch it. Um, your your yeast will die off after several weeks. And so that's one of the beers. I think somebody asked me this earlier of like beers that I've had to dump before. One of them was from stressed yeast of using a true amount of Trub. I didn't wash it at all, but I just reused the Trub and I put it in there. I think I used it like 6 weeks later, and it was like very stressed, and you could easily tell I had some off flavors because the yeast was stressed. You can make a starter out of Trub. I have not done that before. But you can make a yeast starter if you think that your yeast count is down. And so it depends on the type of beer too. If it's a lighter beer and you don't need as much yeast cells, then you may be fine. If it's your original gravity for your next beer is gonna be like 1060 or 1.060, I probably just pitch another one, or a new yeast instead of trying to reuse that one. But yeah, 4 weeks is about that threshold. It's like right around there. So if you're gonna use it like soon, I'd go ahead and do it. If you're not, I would not. I would just pitch new yeast or make a starter if you can. I'm gonna brew my first lager this weekend. Hunter said, I was wondering after fermentation, when I go to lager condition, do I have to move it to a secondary fermenter? No, absolutely not. You do not need to use a secondary fermenter for most beers. Secondary, fermenters are normally for, and I only use this, and this is something even I've changed since I started my channel. So you see on my channel I have a secondary fermenter one. I'm like, I do secondary fermenters for all of them. Well, if you're meticulous in your process and you purge your fermenters and all this stuff, you can use secondaries. Absolutely, you definitely can. A lot of breweries use bright tanks and stuff, but they have a better process than most home breweries. So in my case, if I were you, I would not transfer to a different fermenter. What I would do is brew the lager like normal, keep it at lager temperatures, right? At your mid 50s or whatever yeast you're using, make sure it's a good fermenting temperature for that. Then I would go ahead and as it gets finishing up, so under 1.020, I would start raising that up for a diacetyl rest. That's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. If you were on here, that you saw the little thing for my tilt. Do a diacetyl rest, get it up to 1070-ish, or excuse me, 70 degrees-ish, 65 to 70. Let it clean up. Then I'll let it finish out completely. Then you can start cold crashing it down, or you can just transfer it into a keg or whatever, and then let it condition. That this is the conditioning phase where you want to be cold again after the diacetyl rest, and then you need to let it sit for 4 weeks. So if you're bottling it, then you need to uh, then it's a little bit different. You want to condition first, then bottle. But I would, if you're going to keg it, if you're in the kegging phase, then I would go ahead. I would just keg it. I would put it in your thing. Even if you put it on gas, that's fine. You can start carbonating up it whenever you want, and then I would let it condition for 4 weeks in that keg. Just let it sit there. On pressure, doesn't matter. But you do not need to move it to a secondary fermenter at all. That's not necessary. Um, the Now I wouldn't necessarily leave it in the primary for another 4 weeks. You start. Some people are like, well, I wouldn't leave it on the yeast for that long because as you start getting grassy flavors, you probably won't. As long as it's not more than that, right? So I wouldn't leave it for months, but being on there for 2-3 weeks isn't gonna kill it. It's not gonna be bad at all. Um, you shouldn't need to put it in a secondary. If you want to, you can. Just make sure you're purging the vessels of oxygen. So you put a little bit of CO2 in the bottom of them. Be very careful not to splash around beer and that kind of thing. But you can, if you need to, move it to a secondary. It does help with clarity if you can do it, but you don't have to use a secondary at all. Like the only major smell off flavor I've had is sulfur bomb. Yeah, in a lager for sure. Experienced it again last week trying to figure out if I must dump the fermenter. I didn't last time and ended up dumping bottles. The sulfur bombs are coming because you're not raising that temperature up, letting the yeast finish off some of those sulfury, even diacetyl flavors and stuff. So again, make sure your sulfur though, if it's just the sulfur smell, like the kind of rotten egg flavor smell, it's not flavor really, it's more smell. That stuff, even in a keg, will like purge out eventually. So that one, if you let it sit for a couple of weeks, you keep kind of purging the pressure relief valve on your keg for a little bit. That one will actually dissipate over time. If it's just sulfur, if it's diacetyl, you won't. That butterscotch flavor is there to stay. But you have to have the yeast in order to clean that stuff up. But that's where if you raise up a lager, you let it sit for a couple days, make sure it stays at that kind of warmer temperature for 3-4 days. That's the best thing you can do is just let it kind of sit. Don't rush it. I know the dry yeast was old. I didn't know how to store it. Should have double pitched, but I didn't. I don't know. You're getting the sulfury smells though from under pitching. I think that's just the sulfury smells of a lager yeast. That's just the normal smell you get from some lager yeast. And so the only way to do that is to have it clean up and finish out over time with being patient and letting it sit at those warmer temperatures, that kind of thing. Thank you, and I'm still bothering. So yeah, for Hunter, for you, you could choose to rack to a secondary if you wanted to get it off the yeast. But what I would probably do if I were you is I would after it gets completely done, I let it sit in the same primary for about another week. Then I would and make sure it's if you're lagering, make sure you're doing the diacetyl rest that I was just talking about and stuff. then I would bottle it, and you can let it sit at room temperature at that point to let it carb up. But then I would let it, but I would be at a colder wherever you can store them. That's the coldest, right? Not in a refrigerator because you need it to carb still, so you don't want it to. But you can still let it sit at like 50s because but it'll just take longer to carbonate. But you need to let it sit for 3-4 weeks anyway. So if you can put it underneath the stairs or in a basement or something like that for a little while, that's the best. That's the best way to do it. But you do need the warmer temperatures to let the little bit of residual yeast eat the sugars and ferment and create that carbonation in your beer. But then you need to go into the conditioning phase. Now you're putting it in somewhere cooler, dry, cold area of your house, not 90 degrees. Definitely not in a garage when during the summer. But then you can start, putting a few in the refrigerator and stuff. But you can't put them in the refrigerator right away because you'll need that. You'll need to, if you're carbing with corn sugar and stuff, then you need that to actually carb up the beer. But you can do that first. So you can carb it up, then you can condition. But it's going to take that 4 weeks after carbonation's done to condition. You still need to let it sit there, let it clean up. That lagering doesn't mean cold. It means it's a German word that means to store. You need to store it for 4 weeks, but you also want it to be on the cooler side if you can. That's just a sulfur smell. Yeah. Okay. I'll give it a last chance in the keg. Might as well. So yeah, and what I would do, Enclave, is just start purging your keg. Let it purge all the pressure out of it. Let it sit for like another, couple hours. Come back, do it again. Do it. Eventually, that sulfur smell will go away. If it's not like in the beer and you can't taste it, if it's just the smell, that stuff will dissipate over time. So try that. All right, I've been talking so much I haven't even tried my 2 hearted ale. It's like brand new still. Mm. One of my favorite beers all time, hands down. I mean, seriously, to me, if I had to pick one beer to have, like one commercial beer, Bell's 2 hearted ale, hands down, favorite beer. I mean, for favorite commercial beer ever. I mean, that you can reliably get anywhere, and it's gonna be awesome. I mean, the Centennial hops in there is just fantastic, fantastic. So, well, I'm thinking of doing this Chinook flavor beer that I need to do because I need to do Chinook hops, and I'm thinking that's a similar type of flavor, color, everything I'm going for in that beer. I think I'm gonna go for something like that for that Chinook competition I'm in. I was doing some garden work and dug up a bottle opener from a company that went out of business in the 60s. Looks like old Dutch beer. I have no idea how old it is, but I'll restore it for fun. That's cool, man. That's awesome. What's up, Kurt? Welcome, welcome, man. How are you? Thanks for jumping on. I know we're getting on here, so it's I always like to get on here about 8 my time, and it's east coast of United States, so we're 3 hours difference of West Coast people. So as we're getting people at like 7:30 at in California, they're now jumping on and other stuff. So I like to stay on a little bit later to try to get some of those guys from Cali on and try to hit the West Coast as people are getting later in their evening, but. We start a little bit earlier on the East Coast, but anyway, if you don't mind, I'm gonna run grab something real quick, and I'm gonna have a sip of this. But I'll be back in just a second. Again, leave any questions, comments, suggestions in the chat section. I'll go over kind of some of my for people who are just jumping out. I'll go over some of my more kind of upcoming videos and recent beers that I've done in just a moment. I'm also gonna talk a little bit about those other beers we were talking about what I'm going to do for that kind of clone beer again, so I can get some other feedback from people who are just jumping on. But bear with me for just a second. I'll be right back here just a second. Again, if you haven't, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to become a member like Enclave and others that are on here, get my member videos early. And as I post them, which there's some on there right now, and get those exclusive recipes like that hazy that I got second place on again, go ahead and hit that join button. I'll be right back in just 1 second. All right, sorry about that, guys. Just had to run, use the restroom real quick here. Yeah, that's basically it, man. Kurt called it out. 2 a.m. my time. Next time I won't fall asleep. Hey, well, hey, you got to jump on and get some beer knowledge when you get it. Kurt's in Iowa, got Louisiana here. I'm over in the Carolinas, of course. Just want to say thank you for sending me your stickers. I'm putting them on for good use. Awesome. Or putting them to good use. Yeah. Absolutely, Larry. Cool. If anyone else wants stickers, make sure you email me down here in the scrolling bar down here. Say, get some stickers. You can get send me your name and your email or your email. Send your name and send me an email with your name and address, and I'll get you some stickers in the mail like Larry got, and he can attest to how awesome they are. And you can stick them on your keyser. You can put them at different breweries and all that kind of thing. So email me at cityscapebrew@gmail.com. So it's not brewing, but cityscapebrew@gmail. Your name and address. I will get you some stickers in the mail for free. I do not charge for those. I just throw them out at my own expense. I don't care if you're international. I don't care if you're domestic. I will send you some no matter what. 10 years in here, old man, 63 September. Nice. I'm today is my 42nd birthday. So 42. So I'm getting there. Couple years past 40. I don't like to admit that, but I said it was my 13th year or 13th anniversary of turning 29. I don't want to have birthdays anymore. Hazy is my Mount Everest. One day with Firmzilla, I'm taking a shot at it all. I'm either going to nail it or I'm learning plenty of lessons. Both worth it. Absolutely. That's the way to go. With closed transfer, I'm sure it'll be fine. Absolutely. If you're following the directions, you're learning some things along the way. I'm sure it'll be great. Honestly, part of it is just doing it. Part of it is just learning to brew. I mean, you just got to get some batches under your belt and do it all the way. So, absolutely. It's a great beer. Check it out. If you have questions, that's what I'm here for. Send me an email, send me a comment underneath the video. I don't care. I'll see it and I will reply for sure because that's what it's all about. Especially as a member, I don't mind emails. Send me an email at Cityscape Brew, and I will tell you what, members get the priority because I want to help you guys out. You guys are helping the channel, so go ahead and do that for sure. I mean, I'll reply to anyone, but everybody does that kind of stuff. So, um, just looking at some other comments that I got from on my phone here. Okay, cool. Yeah, a couple of you guys already emailed me for stickers. That's awesome. I'm gonna get those out to you tomorrow. Sweet. Yeah, this yeah, still a punk. Absolutely. I know, right? I'm still learning. Get off my lawn. Speaking of lawn, I had to mow even though it was on my birthday. To mow the damn lawn. That's what happens when you get old. You don't even get like birthdays. It's just like another day. Grass is still growing. Still need to mow. But yeah, dude, I'm telling you, I always keep a couple of these Bell's Two Hearted on because it's like my favorite beer of all time. And so when in doubt, grab a Bell's Two Hearted, man. It's the way to go. That's what I do when I'm like, hey, what kind of beer do I want? Although I have my own four taps that I drink enough of, it's always nice to just kick back, have one of these. I mean, I wouldn't. I always keep like a six pack in there and just like have one once in a while. It's great. Ascorbic acid has helped a bunch. All right, man. I will tell you what, I would have not thought that would have worked, but I do that to almost all of my beers that are lighter color beers now. So, I did for my Pilsner, my one I just had for the Mexican lager, the Ocho de Junio. I did I do all my hazies that way. The ascorbic acid is for whatever it does, whatever chemical reaction that happens in the mash, and it gets hotter after that. So it kills off the ascorbic acid eventually because you're boiling it literally after that. But whatever it does in that mash, and I'm not a chemistry whiz, really does help later on in the process. And it's made my beers stay fresh longer in the keg, longer any portion of it. I used to have beers that would taste older and it just doesn't happen as much. So the ascorbic acid definitely helps. I will say right now that's a super simple solution. I've only bought one bag of ascorbic acid in my entire life. And that was on Amazon. I have the same one I use at my store, link in the description, of course. But that bag, you're only putting 4 grams in each time. It's just vitamin C. You're just putting it in there, and 4 grams in that bag's lasted me forever, and it's still got months and months and months left. I probably won't buy another one until like next beginning of next year. Just not even know how many brews I'm going to brew. So crazy, cheap, 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 but helps your beer tremendously. 100% agree. Enclave, you don't look much older than me, and I'm 31. That's why I wear a hat, so you can't see all this gray hair and stuff I got going on in here, and the white kind of blends it in here. So I had a bunch of gray hairs going in. But then again, I had a cousin who was like bald at 30, so I'm not as I'm doing better than he was. Scorpic acid helps. Already grabbed some. Yeah, I will tell you it does help the ascorbic acid. Do it absolutely. pH regulation, scrubs oxygen from dry hopping. Yeah, that's another thing. I've been more concerned about oxidation during dry hopping and stuff. I haven't when you're doing active fermentation and you're still having all the active fermentation action happening. That's going to kind of push out the oxygen anyway. I mean, you're dumping those in there, but you're actively bubbling out all the time, right? All that oxygen is going to find its way to the top and get out of there. The where it does help is post fermentation, where you do not have that airlock activity anymore, and so I have been starting to do the hop bags on the side of the fermenter with the sous vide magnets, and that's helped a ton. So that's a really good way to do it later. Is and then all those hops sitting in there, they've already are getting purged of oxygen as your fermentation's happening, and then you just pull the magnet off, and the magnets drop in there, and you're good to go. The better way of doing it too. Ask me how many different styles do you keep on tap at any given time? I currently have 4 different beers on tap. Same here. So I have four. Actually, I have a fifth one that I have a pale ale that's like that I don't have I have a picnic tap inside of my fridge for, so I could have had a fifth one tonight. My kegerator, if I wanted to, can fit 6 beers, but that's only if I take off the stuff on the door. So I don't, but I can fit 5 easily because I fit like 3 and then 2 in between the little cracks, and it helps push it a little bit forward. So I keep 5 kegs in there generally, and that means the fifth one is usually, excuse me, carbing up or lagering or something else in there. And then or I'm just switching one out and I only have four. So I usually have four beers on tap at all times. I always have a sour because my wife does not drink regular beers, so she likes sour beers. So I always keep a sour on tap. And then a lot of friends that aren't beer drinkers that come over, they like the sours more than anything, sours or ciders or whatever. So I keep a sour on tap. I always have some type of IPA or pale ale. So that's one of my kind of go-to beers I like to have all the time anyway. I always have some type of seasonal beer. So it'll be either a summer beer, like right now I have the Tangerine IPA. Um, I have coming up, I have the Vienna Lager that will replace that one. Um, I'll have the Pilsner before that too, but that's another one. And then the fourth beer is usually some. So I have the IPA. I have a sour. I have some seasonal beer, and then the fourth one will usually be some type of lighter non IPA, or maybe it's a hazy or something like that, different um, type of beer. So in this case, I'll have a Pilsner. That will be my fourth tap. I'll have the Vienna Lager, which would be my seasonal one. Right now, I also have the Mexican lager, but since the lagers take so long, they'll probably replace each other. So once that Mexican lager gets done, I'm sure my Pilsner will be done because that one's got another 4 weeks. I've got the Vienna lager, which I'm going to brew next weekend. So that's got 6 weeks from there. So that'll kind of replace those a little bit. Then I have, well, the Vienna lager will replace one of my seasonals. But again, and they're not in any particular order. The only one I keep in the same tap is my sours, just so my wife knows exactly which tap is her tap. So that's it. She likes the sours, so I keep that one on the same tap every time. The very right hand tap is her tap. That's the one she knows she can go to and get a sour beer. I got six tap keys are built, only two taps installed. The taps cost more than my brand new freezer. Yeah, Nuka taps uh stole my money. Yeah, I like Nuka taps. They're the same as mine. I have inner taps, which are the same type of thing. I think you just put the springs in there, which is awesome. The best way to have those is the springs. I think the Nuka taps are the same as the inner taps, where you can have the interchangeable um nozzle on them, so they have the you can do a growler filler, or you can do like a nitro, um, stout tap if you want. You can do a uh, different things with the spout. One thing I like that the unscrew is that they're actually easier to clean, because that's the only part that really touches air. So you can take those out, clean them real good, spray them up with sanitizer and stuff inside of them. So I do like the inner tap and Nuka tab handles just for that reason. And so I have a whole video on the difference between the tap handles, or like a standard tap handle, and the inner tap handles. And then the springs that come with them, they are self-closing. So you can't like accidentally bump one and keep it open, which happened to me. I made an awesome hazy a few years ago. And I walked out the garage. I came back in. I was carrying something, and I accidentally hit one of my tap handles, and I did not realize it. But I kept when I came back out just a few minutes later, the the beer keg was completely empty, hissing CO2 out of the tap handle, and all my beer was draining down my driveway. All like 3 gallon, 3.5 gallons left, or whatever I had left of it, was draining down my driveway the entire time. I'm like, no. So the good news is that the springs help keep those closed, and that never happens anymore, or will not happen anymore. So that's awesome. I'll grab the other four when you get paid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're not. I think the inner tap ones are about $30 for the stainless steel versions, maybe. I think that might come for that much with the with the spring. I can't remember. I have them in that video link, and I have them in my Amazon store. So anything I brew with or have for fermentation, it's in my Amazon store. Check it out. So far, only cider on tap. Doing a Mexican lager again on maybe today. Awesome. Get some sleep before you brew. Just checking in, and happy, and not sure whose birthday it is. It's my birthday, Brandon. But happy birthday. I appreciate it. Yeah, today is my birthday. I decided to come on, have some beers with you guys. I had a good weekend with the fam, but not going to stop me from coming on talking about beer. Got to do that too. That's a priority. Exactly right. Basically, Keglin's copycat intertap. Okay, yeah. So yeah, same thing. I mean, and that's okay. Teach their own. If they pour beer, they're good for me. Yeah, you have a cat and hope she can't turn on the taps. Yeah, absolutely. If you knock into a tap handle, that would not be a good idea. So yeah, those the cats, they're gonna spill all your beer, and then you're gonna be upset. I will say that. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys hanging out with me today for my birthday. It was awesome. Again, if you want stickers, and I've got a couple of requests for those already, make sure you email me name and address, cityscapebrew@gmail.com. You'll get those. Again, appreciate every one of you guys for jumping on and being super supportive tonight, especially the members that are jumping on and becoming members. I've got a couple people joining as members tonight. That's awesome. They get videos early as I post them. Again, I have that CO2 leak one already there that other people will get it in about a week. I've got 3 other videos in the works and getting on the channel. So as they jump on, and I upload them all the time. Once I upload them, you guys get those videos early. You can watch them right away. Then you also get access to those kind of members only recipes. And so what I'm planning on doing is adding new recipes every month. So by the end of the year, you're going to have 12 kind of for you guys recipes only for members. And those are exclusive recipes that I know are better than most that are on my channel for everybody. And all of them are, I think, are really good. And I do film a lot of them. So even as a non-member, you'll get some of those. But if you want the exclusive recipes that are like awesome that nobody else is gonna get, hit that join button. It's a couple bucks. Again, I think the only rate I have is like $2.99 a month. It helps out the channel a lot, but also gets you access to those other things, gets you the videos earlier, and it helps the channel, man. If this channel has helped you at all, it helps keep me bringing you guys new videos and things. So I appreciate all you guys jumping on tonight and celebrating my birthday with me too. So I appreciate all you guys that said happy birthday and gave me a shout out today, or even those that have commented and haven't been able to jump in the live. I appreciate all of you guys. It's been super, super fun. I'm going to jump off for tonight though, so I can get a good night's sleep before I got to head to work tomorrow. But again, I appreciate all you guys for jumping on and spending some time on my birthday. It means a lot. And happy brewing, guys, and cheers. Let me know if you have any other questions and comment on the video afterwards. And I'd be happy to help you guys out. But again, send me some information if you want a sticker. It's below there. Happy brewing, guys. Thanks for joining me tonight, and cheers.